I'm going to go ahead and get started. Lakeisha Wise is coming from another meeting, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Thanks, everybody, for coming. We're back. Back as normal. Tonight we are here. The next meeting on the 24th and July 8th, where's Krista? We are at Olentangy. Oh, at Berlin, because we've got award presentations.
24th is here.
24th is here.
Oh, okay, 24th is here, and then the 8th. I should have read the email, but I've got my stuff up here, so it's here, and the 8th is at Berlin for awards. All right. Okay, so Mrs. Hatfield, call the meeting to order and call the roll.
Mr. King?
Here.
Mrs. Patrick?
Here.
Mr. O'Brien?
Here.
Mrs. Wagner-Fiesel?
Here?
And Dr. Weiss is running late.
Yep.
Thank you.
Please stand to say the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, on tonight's agenda, before we approve it, I just want to go over the presentations for food service, our building projects, and our strategic plan. And then we have two discussion items before we get into voting. So there will be an executive session at the end of this meeting, but we will not be taking any action after the executive session. So we'll just adjourn and go into executive session, continue with our executive session, and then come back and adjourn the full meeting. Okay, so now that I've gone over that, I need approval on the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Do you have a second? I'll second. Mindy? Any further discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mrs. Patrick?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
And Mrs. Wagner-Fiesel?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, our first presentation tonight is Bethany Lenko, and she is going to give us a food service update.
Yes, I
One of our annual
am.
presentations.
Yes. So thank you for having me here this evening. In the spirit of tradition, I did bring some treats for everyone, so we'll pass them around when I'm done, and you can just help yourself. They are Smart Snack approved cookies, which means they meet the federal regulations for a la carte. We have a candy cookie and then a double chocolate chip. So they're whole grain, under 200 calories, meet Smart Snacks.
Why'd you look at me when you said 200 calories?
I didn't mean to. But yes, thank you for having me here this evening. I'm just here just to provide an update on the food service department from last school year and into talking about next school year. So I first want to start off my presentation by thanking our food service staff for all the hard work they put in this past school year. It was because of them we were able to feed all the students of Olentangy. It didn't matter if the students were learning in school, if they were learning at home on the remote days, or if they participated in the CDL program. All students in Olentangy had the opportunity to get 2 meals a day provided by these hard-working individuals. In addition to the normal meal service, they were able to offer weekend meals. We offered a Thanksgiving break meal kit, a winter break meal kit, and a spring break meal kit. So they handed these meals out when it was raining, snowing, when it was cold, when it was sunny. So they just really stepped up to the plate. I want to make sure that they get the recognition that they deserve because it was a true labor of love each and every day. So I just want to thank them immensely. Sometimes I get a little emotional thinking about everything they did this year, but I'm just so proud of them. So after that, now we'll get into a little bit more of the nitty-gritty stuff. So just as an overview, the food service department, we are a national school lunch program and school breakfast sponsor, which means we are overseen by the United States Department of Agriculture and the Ohio Department of Education Office of Integrated Student Support. We operate as a nonprofit department. Any profit that we would make is meant to be reinvested back into the program, be it on equipment or food quality, So we are meant to operate as nonprofit. We have 24 on-site kitchens with 24 managers and about 123 food service workers. And then we also have 1 maintenance position, 2 administrative assistants, 2 assistant supervisors, and then myself as the supervisor. How we operate on a typical school year is students are charged a lunch price based upon their meal eligibility status. So they could either be either free, reduced, or paid. So the student is charged that price, and then in turn, the federal government reimburses the food service department for that lunch that is served. So the chart you have here is just for lunch. It's broken out by school level, elementary, middle school, and high school. As you can see, the paid lunch price, for example, at elementary is $2.50. That's something that's approved by the board anytime we need to raise lunch prices. For that meal, the federal government in turn gives us 40 cents for that meal. So that total meal revenue we get is $2.90 for a paid student. As you can see from the chart, a reduced and free student, we get $3.58 for that same meal. So a free and reduced student, we actually receive more revenue from that same meal that a paid student also took. Same is true at middle school and also high school. Then this next slide shows breakfast. So breakfast is done the same way, in which the eligibility status of the student is based upon what they're charged for that breakfast meal that they select. Across the district, our breakfast price is $1.50. We receive 32 cents from the federal government for that breakfast meal for a total of $1.82. A free and reduced student reimbursement, we get $1.89. So again, we receive more revenue from a free and reduced student than we do a paid student. So that's how we typically operate. This past school year, we operated under the Seamless Summer Option Program, which means every meal served to a student is claimed under the federal free reimbursement rate. It does not take into account a student's eligibility status. So because of that, every breakfast that we served was claimed as a free meal, and we received $1.89 for that breakfast. Lunch, we received the $3.58 for each lunch that was selected by a student. So then I want to go into a more detailed explanation of the hybrid attendance model versus our all-in daily attendance model. So obviously, we were under the hybrid attendance model from August to March. And the first half shows our revenue, and the bottom half of the slide shows the expenses. So under the hybrid attendance model, we served roughly over 11,000 meals per day. Our per day revenue was about $34,000, whereas our expenses were running us about $53,000 a day. The reasoning being is, on a given day under the hybrid attendance model, we only had access to 50% of the kids on a school day, because the other 50% were learning from home. And even though we were offering meals to all students, it didn't make up that difference in what we would normally serve students if they were in the building 5 days a week. And then this slide shows you the daily attendance model, in which we moved to in March. And this is for March and April, because we haven't closed the books on May yet. But this gives you a good representation of our revenue versus expenses under the daily attendance model. So daily attendance, we were serving almost 19,000 meals a day, and our per day revenue was over $58,000. Our expenses were at $56,000. So obviously, we were able to turn a little bit of a profit once we switched over to the daily attendance model. And this next slide is a summary of hybrid versus daily attendance. Hybrid, again, we were doing about a little over 11,000 meals. Daily attendance, almost 19,000 meals a day. Hybrid attendance, we were losing over $18,000 a day, whereas in daily attendance, we were able to make a profit about $1,500 a day. But keep in mind, we are a nonprofit, so even if we were able to turn a profit from the daily attendance, that would be reinvested back into the program to buy new equipment, to maintain equipment, things like that. Planning for next school year. So some of you may be aware, USDA did issue waivers back on April 20th, where they are extending free meals for next school year. These are nationwide waivers to increase funding, support access, and balance operational needs with the goal of providing nutritious meals to the kids. The benefits for offering meals at no charge to our students is we receive more revenue as a food service department for each meal that we serve. Our employees get to stay employed in the food service department. We help keep farmers, truck drivers, food manufacturers, packing plant employees, we help keep them employed. More of the Olentangy families get to keep more of their money in their pocket. And most importantly, students receive a healthy and balanced meal to help them stay focused and learn during the school day. So here's just, we wanted to kind of estimate what next year might look like. This is based upon our current rate that we're getting, so the $3.58 and the $1.89 for breakfast and lunch. We expect the rate to go higher next year. We don't have that figure yet. We're waiting on USDA to offer some more guidance and information as to what next year will look like. But unfortunately, that was supposed to come out in May, and it hasn't come out yet, so we're still waiting. But we expect that rate to be higher. But still, using the current rate that we have, you can see our revenue would be about $58,000 per day, and our expenses would be just under $58,000 a day. And of those expenses, I did want to point out that over 33,000 of those are fixed expenses. So our labor cost, utilities, maintaining the equipment, those expenses are going to happen regardless if when kids are not in school. So if we have non-revenue days, those are just fixed expenses, like our calamity days for snow days. Those are expenses that we would have to pay, but not bring in any revenue on those days.
I have a question.
Yeah.
On any of these, yeah, if you could leave it there, are any of these figured in what you're selling a la carte?
Yes. So see, under revenue, it has that a la carte equivalence. How we come up with a la carte equivalence is we take the dollar amount of a la carte sold and divide it by the paid lunch price to figure out how many meals that would equate to. So for instance, at elementary, the meal price is $2.50. So all the a la carte that's received for that day, we divide it by $2.50, and that's how we equate it to then a la carte equivalents. So it is figured in that total meal count.
But you're telling us that every student in Olentangy is going to get a free breakfast or lunch.
And/or.
Yeah, and we will come out ahead.
We're estimating it, yes, that we could, if the students participate. But we have to take into account if we have calamity days, that can negatively affect our revenue as a whole.
Well, no, I want to make sure that, so the 2020, the 21-22 estimates are based on a more normal environment.
Right.
Yes.
We've got a mix of paid and free,
Right.
right? So the slight margin.
No,
this is all
This is
free.
based on all free.
school year. They're offering the same all-free program for families, for the district. They will fund the meals. If we are in full attendance, we should be close to a break-even result by the end of the school year.
Well,
Yeah, that's why I'm asking the question.
But kids will still pay for a la carte.
Right.
Or if
Right.
they don't actually, they have to get the meal.
Right.
Which means the entree and,
Right, so students, in order for it to be reimbursable, what they select has to meet the qualification that USDA establishes, which they've been doing for years, so it's not a new meal pattern. But if they just select at high school, for instance, if they just select a slice of pizza with chips and a beverage, that does not count. That is all
Right, 'cause
charged
they're
à la
paying
carte.
for that, that's
Yes.
à la carte.
Yes.
Yeah, I understand that. But, it still blows my mind that the federal reimbursement is going to bring us out ahead of what we would normally bring in. And knowing that, we charge, what was it, $3 at the high school level.
Yeah.
Right, so we charge $3, and then the federal government, under the paid program, gives us 40 cents. So that's $3.40, whereas when we're claiming that all is free, that meal, we're now getting $3.58. So it's 18 cents higher and more revenue that we're getting than if we were charging the student for the meal.
So if we didn't offer the free lunches, we probably wouldn't be in this, we probably would not come out ahead.
Correct, yes, because we wouldn't have that increased revenue.
So à la carte is why I have to keep reloading the girls' accounts.
Yes, yes. And à la carte, we do not let students charge à la carte. So they have to have either a cash in hand or they need to have money on their account, because that's the way our meal charge policy is. So,
seconds. I was a lunchroom mom, so there was a lot of, I'm going for seconds. If seconds, I would assume, would not be able to participate in this.
so if they've already received a reimbursable lunch, they cannot get a second one. USDA, it says it's one per child. So if they've already gotten a reimbursable meal, anything else that they would get on, in addition to that, we charge à la carte.
So if students opt for seconds and à la carte items, with this federal subsidy, we could really come out ahead in the food service area.
Yes, and especially if the rate for seamless summer is higher next year. They're saying it could be as high as over $4, possibly.
How sustainable is that? At some point, is the Department of Agriculture going to pull back?
There is legislation to make meals universally free. Now, where that goes, I have no idea, but there is a big push for that from certain.
Everything's free.
But I think that is going to be a challenge if and when meals go back to being paid, for people to understand, why was it free last year and now I have to pay for it? And it will be an educational.
Well, and the thought was, like, when we did this, when this first started in March 2020, the thought was there could be families impacted, let's just make the meals free. And so that was March 2020, and then it was extended throughout the summer.
Right.
And then extended throughout the school year.
It's been extended many times.
Yeah. So, Lakeisha, we're just talking about how free lunches will continue for next year.
But if you just look at it from the school district's perspective, you could argue it's finally a means of getting some federal funding to offset some of the pressure on personal.
Yeah, since we got no pandemic relief from the second and third rounds.
Yeah. And it's money out of pocket for families that they don't.
Well, and again, if the food service, we did have to subsidize the food service account through the general fund last year, and are going to have to do that again this year, and we'll have to pay that back. So whatever profit we end up turning, it will be put back into the general
Right.
fund eventually.
But that deficit was because we didn't have the kids in the building every.
Have the revenue.
Margin till.
Yeah.
Right,
Right, they were in a hybrid attendance model.
right. Right. Because we only had 50% of the kids there. So our customer base, if you think of it as a restaurant, because basically we are 24 restaurants operating in each of the school buildings, we only were able to have half the amount of kids on a given day, of our customers on a given day. So, any other questions?
This is very helpful.
Yeah.
Good, good. And
Okay, so that will be communicated to our parents, that you only have to put money in their accounts for the à la carte.
Right, extras à la carte, yes. Yep, and we encourage them, and helps our department when families do participate and and they select a meal. So it is beneficial for them to participate, because that does help our department.
Okay.
So,
All right, thank you.
thank you. I'll pass around snacks.
You should start at that end.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the only way they'll get any left.
Wow.
There'd be like 3.
Pass back there.
Okay. Thanks, Bethany.
Thank you, Mrs. Blanco.
Next, we have our building projects update with Jeff Gordon and Bill O'Sullivan. Oh, and Bruce Runyon's going to speak too. Bruce, you coming up too? Oh, okay.
Well, thanks for the opportunity to talk about our new Meadows Elementary. I thought what we'd do is start with, well, first of all, I just want to head to the slideshows. Is it ready to go?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. I thought we'd step back. The last time we were together, we looked at where we were. I thought we'd pick up from there and then walk through the building, a little bit of the site, do a little aerial photograph kind of stuff, and then talk about a wrap-up of where we are and what's going to finish. So here we go. Last time we were together, there were things happening dramatically. Every month there was a dramatic change on site, so I thought I'd just throw that in for the fun of it. And we went from foundations to getting enclosed and structure, and there we go. Once we reached that point, anybody driving by would say, boy, you guys have stopped working, because it really looks like it slowed down. But it didn't, obviously. A lot went on. The building got to breathing and living and all that as work continued through the winter. And we're up to date now. And this is the front of the school. Gravel you see on the main parking lot, but that will be paved hopefully next week. We've had some rain, and that hasn't been a good thing this past week, but it's getting close. So now we'll walk through the new school together. We're all probably pretty familiar with the layout, but let's just walk in the main lobby, and that's it, with a little bit of tools and carts in the way, but getting close. Down the corridor to a early learning classroom, and you can see the restroom with the stepladder in it. We'll head to the center of the school, where we've got the student dining and a partition that goes between student dining and gym. And there we are with that. And right next door, we've got media center with some protection on the carpet. And as we leave that, we'll go down a green corridor and head to the back of the school to a classroom. So that's kind of a very quick walk through the school. You've seen them all, but just to give you an idea of where we are, progress, even base in this picture, the little detail at the bottom of the wall, the base isn't in there in the picture, but it's in there now. So flooring is just about done. So it's...
Is there any significant differences in the floor plan, or is this pretty much the standard elementary?
It's the extension.
Yeah, it was extended, I'm going to say 30 feet. Bruce will correct me and make it 32 and a half or something, but it was about 30 feet. Classrooms in, just a swath kind of through the middle, which created some classroom additions, but also a great mezzanine for mechanical that we didn't have before.
Okay.
So that is a difference. Okay, if we go out the back door, right by the classroom, we're into the back where the playgrounds are. In this case, finally, some asphalt got started, and you can see that, the black in the front. The side that is light gravel will get paved, that's playground. But the light tan is a soft surface, and that's the nice new soft surface for that playground equipment. And that playground area is complete right now. And we'll walk around to the other side of the school. The bus drop-off side has a base down.
Hey, Bill, can you go back? Is that
Sure.
the same, that's the playground equipment that we'll be putting in all the, or similar to all the
Yes.
new elementaries
Correct.
with the handicap
okay.
accessibility and...
Right. And the soft surface as well, Mr. Rafe. Yeah. Okay. Okay, and then base core's down on the bus side, so it's finally getting to be black and not tan, which is a good thing. And now I'd like to just step to another piece. That's the building per se. As I guess we all know, there were some other things that had to happen on this project that are maybe a little different than in the past. This drawing shows two things that I wanted to bring up. One, the red line that goes from, you can tell where the school is, kind of in the center upper quadrant. There's a red line that goes from that on down. That is a force main. So that is for the sewer that will leave the school. That ties into that stepped area down in the lower left-hand corner is a gravity sewer. That is being done by the county, and it's not yet ready to accept the discharge from our force main. So as we speak, we don't have a force main that is allowed to be turned on by the county. Our force main is ready to go, but it can't be started up until the county says it's okay to put effluent into their sewer. I'll talk about schedule here in just a minute about that. The other side of the site, you can see the kind of curvy line on the one side. That's the North Road extension, and that is underway right now as well, but it's not there yet. So we are still using the temporary construction road to get in and out of the school. So for what that means, we'll get there. This is an aerial, and the light color at the bottom is the parking lot of the school. The curved section is the new North Road extension being cut and goes into Peach Blow Road, which there'll be a roundabout up there. So this is just last week. It hasn't changed a lot with the rain. They haven't done a whole lot more. If we continue down that road to the front of the school, it's just passing by. They're making cuts and crossing over our temporary construction road, which is the very white road that goes also up to Peach Blow. And then if we turn a little more to the right, that road curves around past the retention basin and it will continue. So just to give you a feel for what they've done so far, they being the contractor on behalf of the county building that road. Okay, so to put that into some kind of context, remaining flooring is just about complete in our building. And asphalt paving, as I mentioned, will be completed next week with the weather we had this week. Life safety testing will occur next week, and I'm going to drop back on that in a minute. Loose furnishings has always been planned to start after the 4th of July and still is going to happen as planned. So those items that I just mentioned are all the pieces that the school is responsible for, directly has under contract. They are on schedule for a 7/1 completion, which was the planned completion date from the beginning. The other piece I just want to mention quickly is we can't, I guess, not talk about COVID. On the project, luckily, there weren't any dramatic impacts because of COVID on the project. There's a lot of protocol set up, hand washing, distancing, masks, and all that. We lost some days, but overall, it was made up so it didn't impact the end result, which was a beautiful thing. Telephone and fiber, still not installed. We're hoping for them here shortly in the middle of the month, but they may extend a little bit. Off-site sewer, looked like end of July. It could get earlier, but the county is giving us different answers. We're not sure yet exactly where that'll fall, but it'll be sometime, it looks like, in the month of July. North Road was planned to be first week of July, more or less. With the rain, it's probably going to slow a little bit, so that's going to move into July as well. So the bottom line is the life safety that we do next week will result in, hopefully, a successful life safety, but at best would be a conditional life safety, because until there is a completed road, well, not the road so much, but a sewer, we have to be able to put sewer somewhere. That'll be the final life safety when that's done. So that final will occur sometime after that off-site sewer is complete. So overall in good shape, but waiting for these other off-site things to fall into place. So any questions on that or thoughts?
I'm worried about that sewer.
The good news is, not to get into too much detail with the thing, but there's a piece of it, a drop they
It's
call
always so
it.
much fun to talk about sewer.
Yeah.
When you're opening up a school, you kind of need it.
Yeah. Two things about that. One, it sounds as though the county is making good steps in getting the thing completed, and have said some things that were actually very sound reasons that it sounds like it's getting close. So we still have to wait. There are two components to it. One, they have to finish the tie-in stuff, but the main thing is down at Highest Road, there's a pump station down there, and that has to be completed in order to accept any effluent that goes down the gravity sewer to it. That's the piece they have to get done. In any case, in the worst case, we had already set up a truck to come and pump out the pump station that's on site, so that in the worst case, we can continue to do that. So the school will be operational. It's just a question of which path we have to take to do it.
I would say it's really a nice thing to see the protocols for dealing with the COVID, that the impact has been very minimal. a project we're working on right now, a little over a year in construction, one contractor was off-site for 3 days.
That's
with
it.
the virus, and that was it. The protocols, it's just great to see these contractors and owners paying a lot of attention to keeping that kind of safety in place.
Certainly true. That's about what we experienced, sort of, Dave. We actually closed for 2 days around Christmas.
Yeah.
And maybe Christmas had some input in that, too. I don't know. But those are the only lost total days we had. Other than that, it was an occasional crew that would disappear
Great.
for a bit. So, yeah.
Bill, could you speak to the, what's the worst-case scenario with the road? Yeah.
The worst-case scenario would be we continue to use the temporary road that we're using right now.
So that it's probable that furnishings could get delivered on the temporary road?
They will.
They will.
Get delivered on that road. Yeah, because that new road will not be done when furniture begins. It could finish before furniture's done, but it will begin on a temporary road. Yeah.
I guess as we think of kind of finishing Shell Meadows and think of the new middle school, a lot of inflationary pressure on goods and materials. I mean, I know these aren't lumber-heavy buildings, but are we seeing it in other materials?
Oh, yeah. I think in the middle school, as Mr. Runyon and Mr. Gordon talk about it, we can talk about that more. But it was interesting that, to that point on this school, this school was bid just about the time that Governor DeWine was starting to put the brakes on everything. And it spooked the construction industry, because just prior to that, it was just taking off and continuing, and we were very concerned about exactly that anyway, prior to COVID. So we ended up hitting just a drop in the market right when this bid. So it was excellent for Shale Meadows. For the middle school, yeah, what you said, Mr. O'Brien, is right. That's where we are now. There's a lot of inflation incurring. It's lumber, which in the case of our schools isn't a big component, but steel is dramatically higher than it used to be with longer lead times. So that'll be another struggle we'll talk more about.
Okay.
If we were starting Shale Meadows with the aggressive timeline we undertook now, in these current conditions, it never would have happened because of the lead times of the construction materials.
That's right. That's exactly
Pay
right.
attention.
Any other questions?
But it was the most aggressive timeline we've ever undertaken to get a school done. And there were some delays with the land donation and some of those things that didn't help us, but we've got a great record of on time and under budget.
They do.
And I will
Can't
say
argue
that
with facts, right?
this particular school, having had the pleasure and opportunity, thank you for being involved in it, many of our elementaries, and I always do compare them and always try to make the next one the better one. And this really was one of the best ones we've had from a construction standpoint on site. So that was certainly the good news. So,
Thanks, Bill.
thank you.
Who's next? Bruce?
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I'm going to just do a very brief review of Middle School 6 and pretty much where it's at in terms of its permitting and bidding, getting ready to get started. The exciting thing was a lot of you were with us at the groundbreaking 2 weeks ago, and or maybe that was just last week. But since then, the site work contractor is starting to mobilize. If you go up by the site, you will see site work equipment that's getting ready. If Mother Nature will start to cooperate with us, we'll start seeing some dirt getting moved next week, we hope. And that'll be a start to about 20, 21 months of construction, we hope, that will get us to opening the building for the school year starting in the summer, fall of 2023. So it's ready, it's primed to go, and the other actions we'll take later on here that Jeff will talk about with the second GMP for that will get all the contractors in place for Robertson Construction, and then we're off to the races. So as I said, many of you had seen this before. The middle school is on Pyatt Road, just south of Olentangy Berlin High School, just north of Cheshire Elementary School. Between the western edge is on Gregory Road, the eastern edge where you enter is on Pyatt Road, and it's a great site for a middle school. It's a great campus when you tie it all together with Cheshire and with Berlin High School. You're making it even a better campus by connecting parts and pieces of the bike path that aren't currently there along that road. It'll tie in great with bike path access directly to the building, to the athletic fields, and then tie into bike paths that will tie in all the way up to Berlin Station Road through Berlin High School. So it's going to be a great campus in a couple of years when that all gets completed. I'm going to step away from the microphone. I've got a big mouth, so you'll all hear me real quick. So we've developed a one-way in, one-way out scheme on this building. So we have one way in on the north driveway, and the buses will be on the right lane. The vehicular parent traffic, student traffic will be on the left lane as they come in. So buses will come back and empty their buses here in the back. Parents will come in and they can queue into and park, or queue up and drop off their students here. And then one way out, 2 lanes, one north, one southbound there with that. Worked hard with the county on that traffic scheme to make sure that they were up to speed with everything on that. We have a large upfront parking lot here. This offers more parking in that front parking lot than what you're used to at Hyatt's, what you're used to at Berkshire, because we had the land, we had the ability, and we know we can never build enough parking spaces. And then equivalent parking back here, if this is used, this is going to be used mostly for events after the fact and for events with the athletic field, competition field that is here, as well as the softball, baseball, and practice fields that are a little further to the west there, as is this here. And then here's this bike path that we just spoke of that'll tie all the way up into Berlin High School. These are large retention ponds to help with the storm drainage. It ties into a system that, quite frankly, the Berlin High School tied into years ago. So you're just adding to it as it's coming down. The floor plan, again, this was all based off of Hyatt's Middle School and Berkshire Middle School, which have been successful middle schools for the district. But you had additional needs. So we've talked about this in the past. You needed more academic space. That's what this building offers you. So the dark green boxes are additional classroom and extended learning areas. This offers basically 6 additional classroom educational academic areas than what we have at Hyatt's and Berkshire. Okay, you needed 2 more science rooms, so that's 2 of those spaces. And then when we brought in what we always called the connector from those buildings that is tied into the elementary school at Hyatt's or a future elementary school at Berkshire, if that ever happens, those were brought in. This is a middle school only site. The connector really wouldn't fit, so we brought that in, lengthened out that 2-story academic wing on the building. And as we did that, it created some very natural space that you're going to use as extended learning areas in that. And this was all vetted through and talked quite a bit about with the administration, with Superintendent Waiver, with Dr. Fetty, with the middle school principals that have lived in this building. Again, their number one was give us as much academic space as you can. So that happened. This building is about 10,000 square feet bigger than the buildings that we've built in the past for the middle school.
So with that additional space, both classroom space and square footage, how does this capacity compare to a normal?
That capacity could be looked at in a couple of different ways. The capacity of Berkshire and Hyatt's was always around 900 students. This could be bumped up to that, get you into 1,000 or more, but it's also to offer the more academic offerings that the district has been trying to do in other spaces that you just haven't had because of our growth. So it's going to depend on that. Again, you always want a straight answer from me. I can't give it to you because it goes back to the academic program, and that's not going to be my area of expertise.
Academic space that gets underutilized because you can't get the kids through the cafeteria.
Yeah. Well, one of the places where you put additional square footage was in that cafeteria to help with that issue too. So, very good. And then the second floor, it's really a carbon copy. The 2 rooms, the 2 blue rooms in the middle is where we place the additional science classrooms in that. This plan's worked well for the district. It's just got additional space to help with the programs and help with capacity issues long term. And then aesthetically, it's a little hard to see this, but aesthetically, it is still the masonry buildings, 2 different colors of masonry. This is all concrete block, integral color masonry. Low slope roof. It has metal siding on the high spaces of the gymnasium, the cafeteria. It is still a good economical building, but as Jeff's going to talk about, the construction cost is going way up right now. It's an extremely busy market. You couple that with material shortages and just your costs have just raised up. Quite frankly, in a presentation that we gave to the Development Committee last week, they were thrilled at where the building came in at, quite frankly, even with the construction cost. I feel fortunate, and that's part of working off of a good model that you had to begin with and having good partners with Robertson Construction, certainly with you folks as an owner. And again, Olentangy plays well in the construction market in Central Ohio when it comes to schools, and the fact that this is based off of 2 successful projects that the contractors have remembered over the years, all that comes into play with where we're at with this. So we're in good shape. Permitting-wise, we're in pretty good shape. We've got verbal approvals to start moving dirt work, and there's going to be a lot of dirt work on this site to move. That's what's going to get started most likely next week. We're that close on having all the official approvals from Delaware County Engineers Office on the rest of it, and that's more dotting the I's and crossing the T's right now. I was up at the building department today. We're that close to having a full building permit for the project to actually physically build the building with. So there's not going to be any delays or any holdups because of any of that stuff. And we've got great partners in Delaware County, the engineer's office, Delaware County Building Safety, and Delaware County Health Department that we deal with on a regular basis on behalf of the district. So things are going well from that standpoint. And I'm going to leave the hard part to Mr. Gordon tonight, and that's where we're at financially with things. So, any questions for me?
Nope.
Thanks again for the opportunities. I'll also put a plug in. You got a lot of work going on in the district. Jeff and I have been talking about playgrounds, security vestibules, broadcast journalism rooms, paving projects, you name it, we've been talking about. You've got, every building, it seems, in the district's got multiple projects going on right now. You'll see the fruits of everybody's labor here as we get close to opening school in August. So a lot of stuff going on right now, though. Here you go, Jeff. Thank you.
I heard of buildings, the security vestible's already done.
Not quite.
Okay.
Not quite. They start putting framing up, but it's not complete. So,
Playground's almost done, 2 of them.
All right. Great.
just before I move on to mine, to wrap up a couple things that Mr. Runyon mentioned. When he talked about the in and out pattern of the busing at the middle school, that's the similar as the bus lanes that we're putting in at Hyatt's, which was mobilizing this week and will be starting. So that's a similar, try to separate that traffic so that we carried that over to this middle school when we designed it. The other thing, Mr. O'Brien, the cafeteria, I believe the seating capacity when we added that space was about 100 extra kids per lunch. So just to your point, that was a point. I think that's one of the things, having these gentlemen who I always can't give them enough praise with the work that they do and being community members, the time that they put in and the effort they put in, meeting, especially the design phase with Mr. Runyon, meeting with, when we did Berlin High School, Mr. Rafe, Mr. Wright, Mr. Meyer, who had all been principals, getting their input and taking what was a good solid building and even making it better. We've done the same thing at the elementary school. At Shell Meadows, I had a secretary tell me today, I saw the plans for that new elementary. It's like you guys took everything we've been talking about for the last several years and put into that new building. Well, it is because we brought in principals who had been in those buildings and met with Mr. Runyon, met with the design team, and had those conversations. So it really has been a great process, and then that leads into my discussion with the budget, because it's, we've used the old buildings that we've done, not the they're getting to be old buildings now. They're buildings that have the same floor plan, so on the elementaries, middle schools. So back 2 years ago, in 2019, when we were putting together budgets for these buildings to try to estimate the cost, we took averages of 2 or 3 of the elementary schools, and we took the high bid, the low bid, created an average. and then inflated that up to come up with budget numbers. And that's going to go into what I'm talking about here. And same thing with the middle school. We use that same process. But if you remember back at that time, through the Facilities Committee, and Mr. Bartz was on the committee at the time, I think Ms. Patrick was there as well, we had a lot of conversation about how hard it was to price these two buildings, to estimate the cost, because of what we were seeing with inflation. And that was the regular construction inflation we were seeing at the time from just busy market, shortage of workers, and those things. So put on top of that, the costs that we're seeing now because of shortages of material and all of those other things that are escalating up. We were fortunate to get bidders for all of our packages. Robertson shared with us that they had another package that they didn't get bidders on their first time around for another building. They had to go out and really push people to try to bid on it. So the projects have gone well enough in Olentangy, and they like working with the good documents and the team that we have, that we were able to get bidders for all of ours. So, which leads me into just want to give a wrap up on the Shell Meadows budget. So the left column is the original budget, and that's what we talked about here with the was developed using those averages and working with the Facilities Committee to come up with the cost that we thought for that building. So as you can see, I'll just stick with the bottom line. I won't spend a lot of time on it. $23 million, 23.6 was our budget for that building. As Mr. O'Sullivan mentioned, we went out at a very good time right after COVID. Contractors a little worried. So that top line, the construction cost, the original budget was $19 million. We came fortunate to come in at $17 million. You can see there was quite a bit of savings on that building. The far right column are the actual to dates where we stand. There's still more cost and more to be paid out. I just wanted to give you a snapshot of where we are today. The one thing at the bottom, with this budget actual to date and where we're at and what we know about the building right now and how well the project's gone, there are some contingencies in there as well that are in that budget, as well as some allowances that are in the $14 million at the top. I'm sorry, the $17 million construction costs. There's some allowances in there that are part of the contracts. We work very hard working with Robertson and again our representatives behind me that to make sure the allowances aren't spent unless it's necessary, and make sure contingencies aren't spent unless it's necessary. We review every one of those. I'm not sure that happens on all construction projects and all school construction projects. So we expect, in addition to the money we saved at bid day, we're expecting to get the contingencies and some of the allowances back somewhere around $250,000 back on that project. So the original projected budget was the $23,600,000. The final GMP budget was the $20,911,000. That was remaining building bond balance of $2,715,460 that was left over from this project. So once we had that cost or that savings at bid day, and we had some off-site cost from the development of the land, and that was the temporary sanitary line we put in after the developer, the builder backed out on that site to put the homes in. And then we had the water line that we shared with Delco. Now normally, if we had a water line had to be built to our school, we had to cover that cost. We approached Delco and said, you know, eventually this water line is going to feed the development that's between us and where we're connecting to. And Delco was great and stepped up and said, I tell you, we'll split the cost with you since we know that the developer will bring some money back to Delco. And they actually put it in. We designed it, had our CT consultants design that for us, but then Delco put that in, and they have a better cost of doing that in contracts they have because they use these contractors all the time. So they put that in at a lower cost than we could have put it in and then split the cost with us. So that's the total cost for that off-site to date is $626,000. I think that'll be the balance for the off-site, which gives us the estimated remaining balance of just over $2 million. Again, that's from what we estimated that building to cost at the time. And the plan at this time is to use that money to offset some PI funds that we used to purchase the land for Middle School 6. Remember, we had property to the north that wasn't quite ready to be developed yet. We punted and bought the site that the middle school currently will sit on. So that will help offset some of those PI costs. So then to the middle school. As you can see, again, the estimated building cost that was developed through that process we talked about, and that was a $45 million budget for the whole project. And we've now gone out to bid, completed the bid process. The board has approved the GMP tonight, and we are almost $2.3 million over what we estimated. There's a lot of things that go into that. I know that we talked earlier about the inflation we were concerned with, and the Facilities Committee at the time we were approving budgets to go on the bond talked about inflation and their concern with it at the time, again, before the material shortage. And we talked about a $10 million contingency to deal with those things if we need it. So that is out there if we need it. We'll talk a little bit about this budget and where we sit today. And so $48 million for the actual project, about $2.3 million over. Now, we expect, and I'm going to say, I just talked about getting what we think will be about $250,000 back on the elementary school. There are some contingencies and some allowances in here that if this project can go well and some of the market conditions don't push us out, that we can recover. And we have, you can see the construction contingencies is $581,000, as well as the owner's contingency down below is another $593,000. So we have those normal contingencies in there. In addition to that, we have $500,000 in contingencies in there for, broken up really into two buckets. The first is market conditions. The second is our temp heating and cooling. Normally we include this in the budget, but with the timeline of this building, we would normally hit a part in construction where we don't have to do a lot of temp heating or cooling because of the timing of when it's there. But if we have to wait on some materials and it pushes us further out, whereas our second winter, the winter of 2022, we could be in a situation where we would have been using the permanent heating and cooling, where we have to supply temp heating and cooling. So we have $250,000 contingency in there, and we did it as a contingency because, again, we control that much more so, and we have those conversations before that's spent. Rather than just automatically include that in the budget, building budget, we want to have some control over how that money was spent, as well as another $250,000 in market conditions that if we get delayed with material and we have to push out. So if the project goes 6 weeks longer, that's going to be 6 weeks more of other costs, labor, people, the subcontractors, having people on site still working. So we've tried to cover for all of those costs. So we will work hard on this building to track all of those contingencies and those allowances and only use them if they're necessary. Any questions?
Are you going to touch on the playgrounds and the security vestibules?
I do not have pictures, but I can give you the updates. We have started, Robertson is working with us on that. There were just too many projects for us to do ourselves in-house. We have, aside from the new construction of the buildings, we have, I think, 81 projects going on, and that's not counting at 81 at different buildings. Some, for example, the asphalt projects, some of the ones that are different buildings, 81 projects, not counting what our maintenance staff is doing for projects this summer. So we brought Robertson in to help manage that, and they have been fantastic. They've got 2 separate crews working on playgrounds, so they have been at or touched, I think, somewhere around 8 to 10 playgrounds already between demo and then some of them have equipment being installed. And the security vestibules, they have 3 teams, one for the high school and middle school vestibules. There were 5 of those. So they have 2 teams demoing and getting those ready. I'm sorry, 1 team on the high and middle, and then 2 teams split out on the elementary, doing the elementary demo and moving forward on those. So every one of the security vestibules, I believe, has been demoed out or close to having been the demo taken out, ready for the doorways and starting the framing. So, yeah, we have 3 broadcast journalisms going on. Those have all started in all 3 buildings as well. And I think that's all I'm sorry, I already mentioned the Hyatt's middle school bus loop has been, they're mobilized for that as well.
Mr. O'Brien, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just want to understand. So we've got some favorability on the elementary.
Yes.
We have some headwinds on the middle school.
Yes.
Why wouldn't we use one to offset the other? And they're both timing issues.
Yeah, I will defer to.
Yes, they can, the bond funds in terms of the cash and the accounting sits in a single account. So to your point, the gain that we have on Shale Meadows can help offset some of the additional costs that we're finding coming on board for middle school 6. So net for the bond package that we've sold, we're still in good shape. And we do have when we were costing those out to Mr. Gordon's point, we put in a contingency for the rise in inflation costs in the materials when we did Shale Meadows. So we're not scared yet. We feel we're in good shape thus far, and we'll keep our eyes on those costs to see if it continues to rise to a point where we feel we might have an issue. But at this point, we're still on target overall.
Yeah, good.
But we also built in, when we were developing the package, I think it was you that was pretty adamant about building enough contingency into the bond package that we would be able to have the authority to sell enough if we needed it, because there was so much uncertainty with construction costs. But again, we only sell the bonds we need once we determine what the pricing of all this is. So, again, I think that was prudent when we developed the package.
I just don't want people to walk away and say, oh, the middle school's running over, they're going to be coming back for money. No, I think we've got it, we're covered.
Yes, we have an overall budget that should cover this. We also, just to let the community know, as we're sitting here and we have an audience, it's great to see you guys. We have about $27 million that we have not issued for the second elementary. We have talked about that. We are looking at our enrollment projections and trying to get our hands around where the preschool, kindergarten enrollment will come in as COVID restrictions lessen and open up for this coming fall. So we'll keep our eye on that, but there is also a component that hasn't been sold to make sure that we're not incurring that interest cost until we're ready to begin construction on that building. So this does not represent the voted package in its entirety.
Anything else for Jeff?
That's good.
Nope. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, our next presentation is a strategic planning update. Mr. Rafe.
Yes. Good evening. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. As we discussed a while back, probably it was March or so, we wanted to give the board and community an update on our strategic plan, where we are with the plan. As you remember, this went into place 2016-17 was when we kind of developed and finalized the implementation of this for us to move forward with long-term. We always had a vision and mission statement, and the vision statement, if you remember, was probably 3 pages of verbiage that was not easy to verbalize. And it included a lot of phrases that were our value statements. So we took that vision statement and synthesized it into a more simple phrase to be the recognized leader for high performance and efficiency in education. Our mission statement is what grounds us in all that we do to facilitate maximum learning for every student. So those value statements were all part of that, and those are the behaviors that we expect of everyone in the organization as we perform our functions. So those are the foundational pieces of our strategic plan. From that, we identified 4 strategic priorities, and those are kind of our pillars of the work that we do. And they are learning and organizational development, our students and stakeholders, resource stewardship, and our internal processes. And if you think about them in terms of a simple question, the students and stakeholders are who we care about, or who do we care about? The resource stewardship is, what do we have? Our internal processes are how do we do things? And our learning and organizational development are how we learn and grow and improve. So those strategic priorities should stand the test of time. They should outlast a board, a superintendent, because there really isn't anything else in a learning organization like a school district that personally I think you would have as a priority. Again, if we're going to achieve the mission to facilitate maximum learning for every student, we have to have a plan that is aligned with goals and work plans that align. We use this as our guiding principle, as a guide. Every meeting we have as a district leadership team, everything we talk about has to fit into one of our strategic priorities. And so as we plan all the work that we do, and we're doing that same kind of work with the buildings as well. So from the strategic, or within each strategic priority, we have 3 strategic objectives. And those could or probably should change over time. So within students and stakeholders, you see alleviating barriers to learning, expand community engagement and relationships, and promote a culture of inclusive excellence. Within learning and organizational development, we have established our brand identity, foster leadership development, and ensure mastery of learning. And then internal processes, we have implement a digital conversion, expand our talent management strategy, strive for a culture of operational excellence, and then resource stewardship, we have maximize investments and revenue, model fiscal responsibility and transparency, and then manage our assets wisely. So we're going to start off today with our learning and organizational development, and I'm going to ask a member of the leadership team to speak as they have most of the responsibility in these areas. So we're going to kick it off with Mrs. Davis, our Chief Communications Officer, to talk about establishing our brand identity.
Okay, hello everyone, and thank you, Mr. Rafe. All right, so we are going to spend a little bit more time on this strategic goal tonight because we're recapping some things and then sharing some new information. So starting out, just to refresh our memories as to why this is one of the 12 goals on our strategic plan. We wanted to establish a brand identity. This is something we've talked a lot about with you as a board, and this was important to create logos and marks that we own and allow us to trademark and protect our intellectual property, and eliminate trademark infringements, which we have had several of, and then remove all Native American imagery while creating more inclusive imagery. While doing that, we also are able to create a modest revenue stream for the district through a licensing program, which we are just beginning. And so I know, Mr. O'Brien, that's something that we've talked about quite a lot through the years, and we're now finally at that point where we have the marks and we're able to move forward. So not only does it allow us to trademark and have that licensing program, but it also allows us to protect our marks and our brand identity, which is important. So there were 2 phases in this goal. One was to develop our district brand identity and launch that. And so we did that in April of 2019. And then in phase 2, we addressed all of our buildings, so the elementary, middle, and high school, and we'll talk a little bit about each of those. So when we launched our district brand, these are some of the logos that we had, but that brand identity includes not just imagery, but also the tagline, Flourish Here, as well as 6 brand pillars. So we really dove into what does it mean to be part of our Olentangy community, and 6 brand pillars or pillars came up. That's opportunity, community, personal achievement, pride, exceptional value, and educational excellence. And you'll see those things on our website. We use those. Those are all important to students, parents, community, staff in our district. And so we then moved on to our elementaries, where we didn't have a brand identity previously. Most of our schools look to the high schools that they, at that time, were currently directed towards. But as we know, in Olentangy, the growth creates need for redistricting frequently. And so we want each of our schools to have a brand identity that the kids can be excited about while they are at that school. and be part of. So the parameters for this part of the project were that the brand project team for each school either select an animal or an insect, have an alliteration with the name of the school, and develop school colors. So we were able to do that as the pandemic started and finished during spring of 2020, and in August of 2020, our elementaries rolled out their brand identities, as well as Shale Meadows, which it will be the Monarchs, as you see there. Lots of excitement last school year surrounding these, and throughout the year, from kindergarten registration through 5th grade, clap-outs, the students and staff and parents have really embraced these. Then we moved on to our middle school brands, and so our parameters surrounding this allowed us to maintain our mascot names, but change the existing imagery. And so in each of these cases, elementary, middle, and high school, a brand project team was created at each building, which involves staff, parents, and in the middle school level, the students were asked to weigh in through different teachers, and this was during the time of the spring of 2020, so they were doing a lot of this work virtually. And so in January, we shared the following 5 images that went with the Eagles, the Trailblazers, the Sentinels, the Scouts, and the Warriors. And for each of these schools, they had a creed that was also developed for them, and that has become a really important point of pride for each of these buildings, because they really identifies who they are and what they're all about. And so in each of these brand committees across all of our buildings, the group talked about what was important to them. What does it mean to be a Hyatt's Eagle, Orange Trailblazer, et cetera. And so that's really what was the foundation of the imagery that was created. And then we moved on to our high school brand identities. And of course, there is a lot more that happens at the high school level. So we were able to involve the athletic directors, the coaches, staff, students, parents, administration for each of the high schools to talk about the brands. The parameters surrounding this project were to keep the name and the colors, but to change the imagery or update the imagery. During that time, we spent a lot of time talking about, again, what it means to be a member of each of these school communities. Obviously, Berlin, just opening, their project was a little bit different, so we were able to maintain their imagery but add to their logo kit. So with each of these schools, and I know we haven't had a formal presentation yet here at a board meeting with the high school images, so we're going to roll through these. Each school has 13 logos or variations of logos, so they can mix and match depending on athletics, extracurriculars, academics, etc. So we'll start with Olentangy High School, which is a riverhawk or an osprey. They wanted to choose something that was representative of this area. This bird is found in this area, and they wanted something that demonstrated fierceness. Olentangy High School, these you'll see the block O. We moved from the block O to more of an Olentangy O, an oval O, with a script across each of the O's for their mascot name, their school name, and then for Olentangy, they sometimes refer to themselves as Tangy, so they have that as well. And then we were able to bring the feather through each of the O right there. And then their creed and their crest. Their crest is actually an updated crest of the elements that existed in their former crest, and then added their river hawk to the top of it. Liberty High School, in their mascot, in their conversation about what it means to be a patriot, they had a lot of images with stars in their in all of their existing logos, so they really wanted the element of stars to flow throughout all of their marks. And so we talked a lot about a forward-looking patriot. What does it mean to be a patriot today? And this is the image that they wanted to develop. They feel that this is a good academic image for them, and they, I think, are planning on using this a lot surrounding their academics. And then they have, you'll see the stars there. They're what we call on the right, the L star is something that they had some very similar and have continued. That is, those across the top with the stars tend to be ones that the teams in the athletic department use. And then they also have a creed and a crest. And then Orange High School went ahead and they talked about what it means to be a pioneer. And they talked about being a forward-thinking pioneer. And they talked about the pioneering spirit, looking ahead, climbing the mountain, achieving heights. And so this was the image that they selected. They also have their block O, or their Olentangy O, with orange, and then the script across each O for their orange and their pioneers, and then that P in the bottom center for the pioneers. Then they have their creed, and then their crest. And on their crest, you can see their acronym for CREST, which talks about some of their character traits, which are very important to them. And then Berlin High School continues to have these existing marks. And then here are their new marks. So they have modified the O and the OB with a claw, and then they have additional claws with their marks. And then they had an existing belief statement, so they don't have a creed because this is very similar to that, and that is a belief statement, and they had the crest that you see there on the right. And so what is next is that we are creating brand guides to give guardrails on how we use all of these marks. We will approve in the communications team all of the use of the marks and allow for creativity and individuality while protecting those school identities. Our partner K-12 licensing, which we talked about a few months ago, will work with vendors and distributors. And then we will be sharing, as well as the schools, the principals will be sharing thoughts from our students and staff about what it means to be a member of each of their school communities as we get ready to return to school. Before Randy goes, are there any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. This question came up from someone in the, who had emailed me. The process of redoing any images that we have, like on the fields or on the gymnasium or, you know, throughout, even on uniforms. And do you want to explain that process?
Sure. The turf will not be torn up. The gym floor will not be torn up. Those things will be replaced as they are needed to be replaced. As uniforms are worn out and need to be replaced, that is when items will be replaced and use new logos and marks.
And just as a reminder, for the existing teams, when they want new uniforms, that's the boosters help raise the money for the uniforms.
Correct.
So we'll buy the uniforms when we open up, you know, a new school, like when we open up the next middle school. But then the booster groups then contribute to or the parents, in some cases, contribute to any new uniforms.
Correct.
And then the turf, all the turf fields have turf replacement funds that they use rental fees from and the sales of tickets, and that's what is used to replace the turf.
Yes.
Any questions? Okay.
All right.
All right.
Mr. Wright? Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. So the second of our goals in this area that we want to talk about tonight is fostering leadership development. And I'm honored to get to work with our principals and administrators across the district in this regard. Just one real quick slide to share. about what we've been doing and where we're heading. So this has been as part of our process from the summer of 2016 through where we are now, and it is an ongoing process where we have spent a lot of time with the leaders that were all in place at that time, and as new leaders and administrators come into the district, we onboard them through a streamlined process here, understanding ourselves as leaders, strengths, where do we have opportunities for growth. What we try to do is develop a consistent language of leadership across the district, and that includes all facets of the organization, so that we can join together and talk about the things that help us do the best that we can for our students and staff. We've had to use what we've learned prior to the start of this past school year, adapt to those unique needs that we have been experiencing. This past year, we had an explicit study. At times, we utilized different content, and we knew going into this, we're going to have to keep a positive mentality. So we did a sort of a book study in the power of positive leadership, and as we continue to unwrap what we do, we try to weave that into what we've built upon and carry us forward. We were able to continue our quarterly Legion meetings where we take a mixed group of administrators from different areas, different levels, and different personality traits to try to bring them together to talk about, one, the content of the book, but also to develop some understanding about how each of the roles in the organization function together. And we have continued our small group and individual conversations, and so that has been a big part of what we've done. Where we're heading, and this has been one of the, I don't know if it's a missed opportunity, but we've worked a little bit too much in silos in the past around professional development, and our goal now is to synthesize the professional development that our staff goes through, that our administrators go through, and that our classified workers, our student aides, our drivers, our food service workers, and we want to make sure that the opportunity exists that we have all of our employees being developed together. And we've kind of, a lot of our academic focus is on our teachers, but we know that in order to serve the needs of each of our students, all of us need to do our best each and every day. And so that's our goal, is where we're heading, is to try and get a more synthesized approach across the district to build upon the work that's been done thus far. So again, just a quick update of where we are and what we're doing, and take any questions that you might have at this time.
Any questions?
All right, thank you.
Good evening. So as far as our priority of ensuring mastery of learning, I think we have a double slide there. I had presented when we first began this strategic plan on the high reliability school framework, in which there are 72 indicators across 5 increasingly difficult levels of reliability to ensure that we're firing on all cylinders, so to speak, as it comes to creating opportunities for kids to succeed. Starting with safety within the school environment and working our way up to comprehensive standards, referenced reporting, and competency-based education. So that continues to be kind of our definition of this objective. Lately, we've had professional development. We were on a multi-year cycle of professional development for emphasizing the importance of student belonging within the classroom and within the school building, and how that leads to student success. Our curriculum departments and pupil services department and technology department have all supported effective teaching strategies within a digital environment this year. Obviously, you're well aware of our committed distance learning program, where we had 5,000 students fully online this year. We continue to create and maintain our curriculum blueprints and academic vocabulary, which I addressed, I believe, at the last board meeting. We've also rolled out the portrait of a learner that you're familiar with. We continue to work on improving our response to intervention process, which is a process for identifying unique student needs of individual learners and addressing those needs. And then, of course, the state has issued new graduation requirements and diploma seals over the last few years that we continue to, we're following their timelines and scaling that up. Where we're headed in the near future is the state's has updated the teacher evaluation system, so Ohio Teacher Evaluation System, what we call OTES. The state has released OTES 2.0, which we're going to have to implement this year. So we're focusing a lot on our principals and our teachers and preparing them for that new system. And it's causing us to, in a good way, take a new approach to a balanced assessment system. The new evaluation system treats assessments differently than the previous evaluation system. If you may remember hearing the phrase SLOs, or student learning objectives. Those were a big part of OTES 1.0, and that whole element is changing in 2.0. So there's lots of training to be done this summer and throughout the early parts of next year to make sure that all of our staff are equipped to implement the new system. We're also, in the fall, going to be launching a curriculum instruction teacher resource calling the Hub. It's basically we're putting resources in one place, easily searchable, to help teachers identify the appropriate. This isn't just about curricular resources, this is also about instructional strategies. So when teachers are looking for how do I help a certain student with a certain need that might be unique, we're going to have a database that they can refer to for assistance. It'll also be very useful in aiding teacher collaboration. And then we're finalizing a K-5 math instructional model that we hope to have had done this past year and kind of got drug out because of all of the events of the past year. So we're very excited to finish that process in the coming year, hopefully. So it's been a very interesting year in terms of teaching and learning, but we've still been moving forward and doing a lot. And the strategic plan has been very helpful in, as Mark had indicated, focusing our conversations not just at the leadership team level, but at the department level as well as in the buildings.
Okay. I have a question. The database of resources for balanced assessment, is that part of the RTI process?
It'll support the RTI process for sure. Yeah. It's not exclusive to it, but it will encompass it, yes.
Thank you.
I have a question. So the hub, will all teachers be able to contribute to that, or is that just what?
So, yeah, the contribution process, we're doing a vetting process to make sure what makes it in there is well research supported, proven. But yes, all teachers would have the ability to suggest an addition or a change, because we want it to reflect all of our teachers as well. One of our values here is collaboration, and this is, as we see it, another way to collaborate, not just within our departments in a single school, but across the district throughout the year, not just on professional development days.
Okay. Any other
Thank you.
questions? All right. Thank you very much.
Yeah, the next meeting we'll do, Krista, which internal processes, I think, is the next one. Or no, students and stakeholders, or no, yeah. Students and stakeholders, no? You changed on me?
I'll go back.
Yeah. We'll have an update on the 24th on another strategic priority, the 8th, and then in August, first meeting in August. We'll be ready to start school year.
Okay. All right, board president's report. I want to touch on the state budget process. I'm going to touch on the process. Mrs. Hatfield is going to touch on the numbers when it comes time for her to just do her report. So where do I begin? Back in 1991, no, because that's how this mess started. But there seems to be no consensus on fixing a problem that has been determined to be broken, which is our school funding formula. And that was determined that it was broken in 1997 by the Ohio Supreme Court when it determined that the current way of funding schools was unconstitutional. And the fact that there has been no consensus in fixing this problem for such a long time is a great disservice to our state. The House passed their version of the budget, which includes the Cup-Patterson School Funding Plan, a plan that took 3 years to craft. The Senate then passed their version yesterday, and that includes a new school funding plan that took them about 3 months to craft. Both fund charter schools directly, which is a good thing, so that when a student would leave Olentangy and go to a charter school, our local funds would not have to be used to offset that cost. But the House's plan would take 6 years to fully implement, but once fully implemented, Olentangy would be receiving over $2,500 per pupil. That's what we should be getting now if the formula worked, but it isn't. The Senate's plan caps Olentangy's funding, and that has been the issue all along, is that our funding as we grow has been capped, and it's been that way since they instituted caps. We have always been capped because our student population has grown and they can't afford to fund us at a level that they're funding other school districts. So our funding has been capped. The most that we've ever gotten is $630 per pupil, and that was back in the early 2000s. Right now it's about $554 per pupil, when private schools are getting $1,348 per pupil. So, as a reminder, we've been receiving less than state funding for years, less than state funding compared to our peer districts, less than state funding compared to our private school districts. And there's no end to that in sight now. It's all up in the air as to what will be happening. People complain that the local taxes that they pay in this school district are high. Well, they are, and that's because we get fewer dollars from the state than the state's average and then our peer districts. But we spend less than the state's average district, and we spend less in our peer districts. But our growth keeps compounding and our state funding never goes up. So that's an issue. We get less in state funding than all the other peer school districts except for Upper Arlington, and they are landlocked and they're not growing. So it's been so hard for us every budget cycle to explain this. We explain it and explain it and explain it, and they just cannot, they're not comprehending. So if a school funding formula has to cap what districts like ours are receiving, then it's still a broken formula. And that's what the Senate's version is doing. It's still capping the amount of state funding that we should be getting. So that I told you in the beginning, the House passed their version of the budget, the Senate passed their version of the budget. They do not agree. So a conference committee will now be formed. It'll be made up of 3 House members and 3 Senate members, of which 4 of those will be Republicans and 2 will be Democrats, and they'll get in a room and they'll hammer out the differences. Once they come up with a budget, whatever the conference committee comes up with, the House and Senate have to vote on it. Nobody gets to come in and make any other comments. That's what they have to vote on. And then they vote on it and it goes to the governor's desk. He does have a line item veto power where he can line item veto things, and that's happened to us before. And then he will sign the budget, and that has to be done by June 30th. So I don't have very good news for you on either end, because we don't know what the answer is yet. So I'm just pointing out the process. We have about 2.5 weeks until we find out what the solution is. The Senate doesn't like the House's version, and I don't know what they're going to come up with. And then I also want to remind people that the state also they could, if they wanted to, provide us with pandemic relief aid that every other school district got, and they have not acted on that yet either. So our neighboring district, Dublin, is getting $10 million in pandemic relief aid. Olentangy's getting nothing. And so we continue to fight that battle as well. I don't know if anything will come of that. Troy Balderson has worked very hard for us to advocate for that, but again, we haven't gotten an answer.
No, we have not.
So that is my report. Sorry, it's not cheery, but I'm kind of frustrated. Mr. Rafe.
Okay. Coming back. All right. Well, hello again. So, I think our last meeting was before
The 20th.
the 20th of May, so I want to just show you some pictures since you weren't able to be at the sunset salutes at all 4 of our high schools. It happened on May 21st. We got very lucky with very nice weather, and I think by all accounts, those ceremonies went very well. People enjoyed those ceremonies. And then we did the commencement walk, so here's some pictures from Berlin High School. If you look in the background, that family chose to use a flatbed trailer and had a hayride. They probably had about 20 people on the flatbed trailer, but the other most interesting were the couple families that chose to pull a boat, had a boat full of people. So they seemed to be having fun with it. So here's some pictures from Liberty High School, and then from Orange High School, or I'm sorry, Olentangy High School, and we put them in the order that they occurred. And then pictures from Orange High School, and we, as a leadership team, when we reviewed this, determined the picture of the young man turning his tassel there, looking very proud, a lot of joy, was our favorite. So, that's what it's all about. We did try to have as much end-of-year celebrations, including the 5th grade celebrations throughout the district. The principals all had the autonomy to create events within their buildings, so we tried to have as much normalcy as possible while the COVID restrictions were still in place. So there's just some pictures from 5th grade celebrations. Mr. O'Brien, I did remember that dunk tank. I remember that time Freedom Trail had a dunk tank, and my wife went in it, and you were not nice to her. You spent some money. You donated some money that night. So. And as Mr. Runyon mentioned, we did have our groundbreaking ceremony, so that was a lot of fun to do that. So we're excited to see Middle School 6 start rising out of the Catters farm. So we did an event here Monday with collaborated with Nationwide Children's Hospital and Coach Day, who is a district parent. He has 3 children in the district. He and his wife have a foundation that is focused on supporting raising awareness for mental health issues. And so Coach Day participated in this parent program teams event, and it was one of our most highly attended parent programs team events. So obviously this is a important issue to continue to raise awareness about the mental health and well-being of our students. So I've said to some people that have emailed me wanting to know answers for next year already that I'd give you an update on planning for the 2021 school year. So quick review, obviously the health orders are no longer in effect, so we are now, thank you. Thank you. I don't know if that was applaud. I think it was applaud for the health orders no longer in effect rather than me, but I get it. Yeah. I get it. Hey, trust me, I'm glad. I'm cheering about it too. I'm right with you on that. So we're very happy that the health orders are no longer in effect, and that we're going to. So we are now not requiring staff or students to wear masks this summer, and the use of face coverings is optional. And we will continue to provide PPE upon request. We're going to continue to do all the routine cleanings and have hand sanitizer available and do all those things that, the PPE was not something we'd done with like shields or those kind of things, but previously, but the cleaning and sanitizing, our custodians and maintenance people, their custodians do an outstanding job of cleaning and sanitizing our facilities all the time. So, the districts that close schools to do like deep cleanings on a Wednesday, it didn't make sense to me because we're doing that kind of high-level cleaning all the time. But again, if right now in the summer activities. If somebody wants something, we will have things available upon request. So we are allowing non-essential visitors to back into our facilities here for this summer. So our visitor procedures are back to normal. Students participating in extracurriculars, if they do have a positive case, they do have to report that to their coaches because we still are responsible. COVID is still considered a Class 1 communicable disease, so we do have to report cases and do contact tracing. So as I noted here, the guidance is right now for our summer operations. That's where we are. And we will be monitoring all of the developments. But, again, given where we are, where I would anticipate we'll be, this will be, in all likelihood, the guidelines will be following in the fall. We will, again, unless we're ordered to do something, we will obviously have to follow an order that we have to, if we're ordered to do something. Where we have options, we're going to, I think, analyze all of the potential options, the risks and rewards, and try to make the best decision possible for moving forward. So, I sent somebody back an email that asked me a question about next year. It's my plan today, standing here, is that we are normal. And if somebody wants something, it would be optional. If somebody doesn't want something, then it's normal operations as best as possible. Obviously, if things change dramatically, my hope is that we're on the backside of this and we have a normal school year. Full stadiums in the fall, watching kids play athletics and all those things. So, I know that wasn't for me again, but anyway, just a quick list of action items. You have a long list of extended service day contracts. Those are mostly for our guidance counselors and library media specialists and the DECA advisors who do work outside of the school year. Those are for next school year, so days at the beginning of the school year and at the end of the school year to kind of close up shop. There are two administrative resignations that I want to highlight. Ms. Stamczewski has accepted a position in New Albany as a high school assistant principal, and Mrs. Heitkamp has accepted a position in Big Walnut as an elementary school principal, and we wish them all the best. They've just been great administrators for us, so we do wish them all the best. We do have an administrative hire on the agenda, Mr. Shane Schoaf, formerly District Teacher of the Year 2 years ago. His wife is actually the best teacher in the family, but I won't say that publicly. Oh, I just did. Mr. Schoaf is going to be the assistant principal at Orange Middle School. Stand up, say hi, welcome. We're very happy to move him forward. The next thing there, you see, this is a big deal. We are, because it is an indication of our intent to return to normalcy, is that we are now approving overnight and student overnight and out-of-state trips for the summer and for next school year. So people are planning, band trips and whatever, all the different places our people go all over the country. You see there, and Dr. Bordage is going to talk about these resources that we're renewing, but our ST Math license that are used all throughout our elementary schools, Newzella, and then Alex, which is another math program. And then you see there the construction manager risk contract with Robertson for middle school 6, and then our service agreement with Ohio State University Wexner Medical Center for student mental health services. I think we are the only district in the state, I would venture to say, that provides a full-time certified mental health counselor at all of our high schools. And we then use the resources we have, that we previously have provided, to provide mental health support at the middle school and elementary buildings. So obviously the people that are at our Ohio State employees, but they're in our high schools every single day. Now, obviously we brought them online last year it was actually 2 years ago in around December, and then closed down for the pandemic, and that we were in, the hybrid model, and it's been difficult to get them up. They have been working all throughout the 2 years that we've had the agreement with Ohio State, but I think, again, as we return to a more normal environment, they will be, the goal is to make sure they're seen as fully integrated as part of the staff at each of the high schools, so that kids who need that assistance. And the other really important part of that agreement with Ohio State is that we do have direct access for bed space for kids in crisis, and that is really important, because you could end up weeks out with a kid in crisis trying to get bed space. So. Finally, a couple important dates. This is important for the community to know that the Power School will be unavailable from June 21st through August 11th, and then we'll reopen the portal on August 12th. So I say that publicly because typically around August 10th, before we reopen it, some high school kid finds a way to get in and find out all their schedules ahead of time, and we still haven't figured out. I'm putting the technology team on notice. This is the year, Dr. Fetty. This is the year. Somebody, it doesn't get hacked. Somebody in technology throws a switch somewhere that ends up putting it on open for like a minute. And
2,000 parents go on.
Yes, thank you for that. And then obviously our next Board of Education meeting is June 24th. So with that, take any questions from the board?
I participated in the virtual presentation with Coach Day and Dr. Houston on Monday, and one thing that Dr. Houston said was that he doesn't call it falling down when, somebody just has something horrible happen to him. He calls it falling up, because he wants whoever fell down to fall up and learn from what happened to them. And I thought that was a really powerful way to look at it. But I appreciated that presentation very much so.
Thank you.
Next, Mrs. Hatfield, the numbers lady.
We're going to go through every page of this. What I've been waiting for.
I'm kidding. It's actually state budget documents, just for support purposes. I promise I won't read it all.
Yeah, what's it? I didn't print off all 157 that related to the school funding formula. I just looked at them on my computer.
Yeah, massively frustrating, but
Yeah.
we'll get to some good things first, and then we'll go back to the state funding update. So I want to talk about our estimated fiscal year-end transfer for general fund. As we remember from Mrs. Lanko's presentation, we talked quite in depth about the food service fund and what's happened with the food service fund throughout the pandemic, and why there was a transfer done for fiscal year 20. So for those in the audience that may not remember, we are on a fiscal year that ends June 30th of each year. And so it follows the academic year, but begins in July and then closes the following June. Last fiscal year, we made a transfer of $1.5 million with the board's approval. In the 5-year forecast, we have approximately $4.2 million reserved or estimated for transfers. What we were looking at that time was the food service fund with actual costs through, I believe, January to February. We were also looking at our athletic funds as well, because of course they were also in the same position as to not have full revenue streams as the food service did. So where are we to date? We have closed the May books, so all of that information is compiled. We have actuals through May. And I'm very happy to share that our estimation is going to go down to $1.4 to $1.5 million. We still have a month of actuals that we would like to get some more data just to make sure that our numbers and estimations are going to come to this. But what has changed? Part of what's in that $4.2 million is $300,000 that's operating contingency. If you remember the 5-year forecast, you'll see the $300,000 in each of the following years for fiscal years '23, '4, and '5. So that's part of it, is a contingency should we need it. If we don't need it, it just goes back into the general fund balance and carries forward to the next year. To date, we have not had to use that. I don't believe that I've had a year being with the Treasurer's Department where we've had to dip into that contingency, but it is a safeguard that we keep in place for operating needs. And then looking at Mrs. Lanko's information, bringing the students back into a full attendance model has extremely helped their department and being able to have revenue. So we are estimating that $1.4 to $1.5 million is what they will need. We've also taken a look at our athletic funds. Our athletic funds do have carry forward cash balances from the previous year. And so at this time, we do not feel that we will recommend a transfer to the athletic funds. We think that they will be able to use their prior fund balances. And as a whole, that athletic fund or 300 fund will be in the black and meet our auditing standards if they come in under their budget. So again, we think we're in much better shape than we had anticipated when we put those fiscal records together 2 or 3 months ago. So that's exciting to share. Our eFinance Plus conversion, we are currently going through the employee demographic portion of that. As you may remember, we are switching to a new fiscal software. That fiscal software also will integrate with our human resources database. So we have separate pieces of software currently. The state software that we are using for our fiscal functions, so our budgetary and our payroll side, will actually be sunset or retired, so to speak, December of 2022. The state will no longer support it. When we took a look at and analyzed our options, we could go with a redesign of what's currently being out there, which basically just made a web interface overlay for the current software, or we could select a different product, eFinance Plus. We chose eFinance Plus because it will integrate with our human resources database, and we will no longer need 2 pieces of software to do the same functionality. eFinance Plus will also give us the opportunity to come into the 21st century. We will have electronic workflows and models and approvals going forward, so it'll help maintain our fiscal efficiency, as well as provide a part of our strategic plan to bring forward digital solutions for both departments. So we will continue to work on that through the summer. We are on target to meet our October go-live date at this time. So excited to continue to work with our Human Resources Department to collaborate and make sure that we've got all of the data up to date and ready to go for that system. Wanted to take a moment to I know I have to pause. Mrs. Katie Bowser will be retiring from the district. She is our executive secretary for the Treasurer's Department. She is our rock in our department. I know, I get a little choked up. But she will be retiring as of July 31st. We are excited for her in the next chapter of her life, and we'll deeply miss her. We do have her replacement on the agenda to transfer Mrs. Tammy Riley from our payroll supervisor to this executive position for our department, and have posted a payroll slot or position which Tammy held. So a little bit of transition, but excited to keep Tammy with us in her tenure with the district. She's been a great asset to our team and won't be leaving us with this transfer, so we're excited about that. Another good metric to share with the community, we have been awarded a STARS rating of 4 from the Auditor of State. This is a new rating metric that the Auditor of State has created for fiscal year 20 records, so this would be last fiscal year. So each year, we are audited by the Auditor of State. They come in and take a look at all of our financial records and our federal dollars and make sure that we are compliant with all of those regulations. This new accreditation that they are offering is in response to our handling of public records requests. So by law, we follow the Ohio Sunshine Laws. Those laws are related to open and transparent government. So when we have a public records request, it either comes into the communications department or myself, and we work together to make sure that we are sharing the information the requester has asked for to the best of our ability. It's gauging our quick response, it's gauging our documentation of response, how quickly and timely we are with getting those records turned around, and so forth. This 4-star rating is the highest rating a government agency can have. So I'm very excited to say that we achieved that new rating to the highest level possible right out of the gate. And quite frankly, we were doing most of those steps prior to when the Auditor of State put this in place. We had changed and enhanced our process a little bit in 2017, but have been meeting those metrics based on Olentangy following best practices, regardless of the Auditor of State's approval. So, great news to share. And now for the state budget. Dun, dun, dun. So as Mrs. Fiesel discussed, the budget is in kind of up in the air. We have been supporting and working for support of the Fair School Funding Plan, for those who may or may not know about that. That is a fair model that has been brought forward through practitioners that are practicing in economics, treasurers, superintendents, educators, as well as bipartisan legislation to put forward a new model that creates a base cost for funding the education of a typical student, and then adds component supports for things such as special education, transportation, gifted, etc. And why that's so important for us to support this model, or why I feel it's extremely important to support the model, is because that model creates a new base, a new way for me to forecast what is coming in the next biennium budgets. It's changing the law and the funding model so that we have stability and understand what's going to be next for the district. I apologize, this is a little small to read. I think this side screen might be a little clearer. But what we are looking at is a snapshot of an estimation using our forecasting software of what House Bill 110 looks like as the House introduced it. It's taking a look at funding students where they are enrolled. It's taking a look at adding additional pieces for those units that we talked about. And so the current estimation for that is approximately $13.192 million. Looking at it from the same funding report format that we get today. And this is what the Senate's version looks like. You'll notice that at the bottom line, it's $11.2 million, roughly $2 million less than the House Bill 110 version as introduced and passed by the House. There is a lot of back and forth currently in the Senate and the House about you're not including this, well, you're funding it at that, you're including old wage analysis, lots of back and forth, kind of pointing the finger about why the Fair School Funding Plan isn't sufficient or working, and the Senate plan is better. In looking at this in an apples to apples comparison, it's not. It just simply is not. The Fair School Funding Plan does have an estimated 6-year implementation. I know that has been another component that the Senate likes to poke at. But quite frankly, it's changing the law and the formula in the law and it becomes the new standard. What the Senate is doing is putting a Band-Aid on pieces and component parts of a formula that doesn't work. It just simply doesn't work. About 83% of the school districts on the current formula funding are either on a guarantee or a cap. They're just not getting, they're either getting guaranteed money for students they no longer have, or they're capped like we are and are growing so fast they don't get fully funded. It just doesn't work. And so this is the frustration that we're dealing with, is trying to educate and understand why the Senate is not in support of a formula correction that has been 3.5 to 4 years in the making. In terms of next steps for those that might be with us in the audience, please educate yourself on this item. There is a lot of material available online. The Senate and the House will publish their bills and will publish support documents. You're more than welcome to go get that if you would like. But that's our analysis on what's coming out of the legislation at this time. So we have a couple more weeks to go, and we'll see where we land. Are there questions that I can answer for you? I know it's a depressing ending, I'm sorry. Hopefully in that bipartisan conference committee, they'll be able, there's going to be a negotiation process. Hopefully they'll be able to pick the components that are helpful and functional and put that together for the governor. There is still an opportunity to lobby for that. And so again, if you would like materials or anybody in the community would like materials, please let me know and I can point you into the direction of where you can find that research material.
All right.
Thank you.
We'll let you get in your seat because you have the next part too for public participation.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm going to take a quick drink.
Yeah. Okay. And for public participation, you're going to read them in the order that they were received.
Yes, so for public participation, the board has a policy that gives us guidelines for public participation and how that takes place. Just to give the audience a few tips, the participant must be recognized by the presiding officer. When we call your name, we would ask you to come to the podium, and we request that you state your name, address, and/or group affiliation, if it's appropriate, for the record, so we know who has made the comment. Each statement made by the participant shall be limited to 5 minutes duration, unless extended by the presiding officer. All statements shall be directed to the presiding officer or the board. No person may address or question board members individually. So we have the public participation items or requests here. I'm just going to go from the top down. The first person who submitted one was Miss Amanda Clark. If you are with us, would you please take the podium and state your name and address for the record?
Hi, good evening. My name is Amanda Clark. My address is 3215 Marcliffe Drive, Lewis Center, Ohio, and I am a parent. Good evening. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today in person. I have been a nurse for nearly 2 decades. My experience and medical knowledge has been beneficial in understanding the manipulation that is occurring with regards to COVID, mask mandates, and the gene modification experimental drug they are calling a vaccine. I stand here today to be the voice for our children, the same children that you were elected to protect. Our children are being forced to carry the burdens of decisions based on emotion, not facts or truth. Let me begin with stating that in the beginning of this so-called pandemic, I too was fearful. At that time, none of us understood how this virus would impact our lives. I had to make the difficult decision of continuing to work in a career that I love, while possibly placing my family at risk. That fear motivated me to do my own research, Today, I stand before you as an educated mother, that not only understands the hard truths, but one that is not going to sit back quietly and allow bureaucrats to make unlawful decisions that are harmful to our children. I don't want to hear we are listening to the experts, because if you think Dr. Fauci, the CDC, or most of those making these ludicrous recommendations are being truthful, then I encourage you to educate yourselves. We did not vote for the elected officials of the CDC. We voted for you. We elected you to make these difficult decisions for our children. Our children are suffering in the hands of the people we trusted to care for them. I have met with Mr. Rafe regarding these concerns previously and continue to meet with stakeholders today. Not one person has taken the time to listen to the actual science behind why masks are not only ineffective in protecting you, but are actually harming our children physically, psychologically, and scholastically. If you turn off the mainstream media and listen to the hundreds of experts that are brave enough to come forward with scientific facts, it would be impossible for you to justify masking our children. Mr. Rafe has been provided a video that will undoubtedly prove neither cloth nor surgical masks are effective in providing protection against any virus. This video includes education from an industrial hygienist PPE expert and provides just one example on how to successfully and safely keep schools open without masks. Unfortunately, censorship and propaganda have been highly successful in brainwashing people into thinking masks protect them. Many parents think their children don't mind wearing them. I challenge those parents to ask their children. I encourage them to become educated on the science, not the manipulated and falsely elevated statistics used to continue fear-mongering and division. I think the most effective way to help lessen fear for those who truly believe that masks save lives is to offer them education. Why is this education not important to any of you? Why does there appear to be a complete lack of concern related to the mental and physical health of our children? Your decisions have destroyed a year of our children's lives, with many of them likely to have lifelong side effects mentally, physically, and scholastically. For not holding an in-person graduation to the obvious support of CRT despite your continued denial. To rebranding our schools without support of the community, and doing so with what I suspect hundreds of thousands of our tax dollars. This community demands answers, and none of you are taking responsibility for these decisions, and in many cases are lying to the people that pay your salaries. The truth always comes to light, and until you show the people of this community some respect and honesty, you will not have my support. As a nurse, I understand the detrimental effects hypoxia has on the body. It is a fact that once you are deprived of oxygen, your body's environment becomes acidic. Cancer cells, viruses, and bacteria thrive in such environments. Hopefully, some of you have been informed about all the controversies Dr. Fauci is finding himself in. From lying to the public about his involvement with Wuhan and funding gain-of-function research, to knowing that hydroxychloroquine was an effective treatment to this virus, to having emails stating that masks do not protect you. Whether you want to believe it or not, we have been deceived, manipulated, and imprisoned for political gain and global warfare. One's ego is a barrier to acceptance, but that should never influence decisions to be based on opinion, fear, and misinformation. None of these decisions have been based on scientific facts. You all have the authority to make positive changes and stop the continued division of our community. Masks should be optional, as it is a parent's right to make these decisions. It is our right to weigh the risks of this virus, which in children there are none, and those induced by wearing a mask. Children have never been spreaders of COVID, and teachers are highly unlikely to be infected by their students. In conclusion, I would like to express how deeply disheartened I am to see our schools support an experimental drug. It is the first mRNA vaccine to be released despite decades of failed research. There have already been more deaths from this jab than all previous vaccines combined. These deaths are not the elderly or immune compromised or those with multiple comorbidities as seen in those who have died from COVID. This jab is killing the healthy and the young. Hundreds of teenagers are suffering myocarditis, which will affect their heart health for a lifetime. This jab is far from safe, and supporting this in our children only highlights the lack of concern you have about the health and future of our children. Thank you.
Next, we have Ms. Christy Hoyt, please. Ms. Hoyt, if you would please state your name and address for the record.
Hi there. My name is Christy Hoyt. I'm a resident in Powell. I'm going to keep my address is on record. Good evening. My name is Christy Hoyt. I live in Powell, and I have 2 children in the Olentangy School District. I'm one of many concerned parents in the school district who are frustrated with our diminishing influence in our children's education. Over the past couple of years, after experiencing a string of quite concerning incidents, my eyes have been opened to what is actually going on both inside and outside our classrooms. Some are from personal experiences, and some are from shared testimonials from parents, students, and teachers. Equal opportunity for all, judging people by the content of their character, not the color of their skin. Diversity of thought, experience, and perspective. These are all principles all Americans and Ohioans should live by and teach our children. Unfortunately, what is happening within the Olentangy School District threatens those principles. In the last board meeting, President's address, Mrs. Fiesel rejected the claim that our school district has adopted critical race theory. Isn't it possible that it is already in use in Olentangy because the board has not been trained on what CRT is and how often it presents itself under the guise of other seemingly feel-good phrasings when in reality it's toxic and divisive? Often those using CRT don't even realize that the materials that they are using are based on CRT framework. Perhaps it has not been formally adopted, but supporters of CRT often hide behind this claim because it isn't part of a curriculum or a formal class that you take, like Physics 101. But as another concerned parent from Virginia recently said, quote, CRT is a broad lens that is implemented through how our teachers are trained, how those trained teachers teach our children, which is to view America, view our institutions, to view our culture, traditions, and language, all based on systemic racism. Here are the remarks by 2 district teachers. Quote, the professional day in September was supposed to be centered on developing a sense of belonging in students and staff, and many other staff members left that day feeling completely defeated. I, for the first time in my years at Olentangy, felt like I didn't belong in the district. The day was focused on a CRT agenda, which goes against my personal values and beliefs. I was truly devastated, and so were my colleagues, end quote. Another district teacher said, we didn't take the training seriously or reflect on it at all because it was designed to make us feel guilt. I was hired to educate students. I'm not qualified to talk to kids about microaggressions. I don't have a degree in that. The hour of training didn't make me feel qualified to have those awful discussions with kids, end quote. There is evidence of classroom bias resulting in viewpoint discrimination. Class projects are graded according to teachers' viewpoints. Students who disagree with teachers are often ridiculed, mocked, and treated as outcasts by other students. Excuse me. Here is an excerpt from an Olentangy student comment on their experience. Quote, my English teacher likes to teach us through BLM, suppression, and human rights. She handed out BLM coloring sheets as everyone understands where her views are at. She teaches all left policies. She is a good person, but not for what she teaches and how she does it. Nobody wants someone to lose their job, but she is not fit to teach in this society. Kids should develop their own beliefs and see what works and doesn't. All left policies being taught and preached can be looked past since we're mature, but we haven't learned a single thing, end quote. Another student's experience, quote, when I was at Hyatt's, I remember a student teacher who was telling us that communism can be a great thing and that dictators like Stalin and Mao Zedong had the right ideas, but just didn't execute them right. There are more than just a few of these instances, and we believe the board, the school administrators, and the community at large need to hear what is actually happening in our community and in our schools. Did you know that there have been talks of a mandatory diversity class before graduation? Did you know that there has been talk of eliminating advanced placement courses? Did you know there are 9-year-olds that had to make protest posters? That was my daughter. And 12-year-olds that had a group project on suicide as the result of bullying, my son. Did you know that there are teachers who turn off the Pledge of Allegiance in the classroom? Did you know that this school district endorses BrainPop as an online class resource for our youngest children? And I will read you one quote from hundreds of videos coming into our homes. Quote, structural racism in our society, a built-in system of bias that makes life easier for white people and more difficult for black people and other people of color, end quote. Did you know that specific hate political groups' messagings are allowed, if not encouraged, in the school hallways, classrooms, and on T-shirts, masks and flags, sometimes worn in the classroom by teachers themselves? We have been told by a senior Olentangy Administrator, Board Policy 2240 addresses controversial issues in the classroom. Quote, "The board recognizes that there is a time and place when controversial issues are appropriate. Teachers should communicate with their principal and their parents if controversial issues will be discussed in class." End quote. This has not happened. Can anyone on the board tell us why Board Policy 2240 is not being enforced? Because no one is communicating with any of us over these controversial issues. Thank you for your time, and we will see you at the next board meeting.
Ms. Maureen Bodos, please.
Anybody answer her question? What about her question at the end? Can anybody answer it?
Ma'am, I'm asking for the next public participant, please. Maureen Bodos.
Questions after.
Thank you.
You realize you folks work for us.
Right, yeah. I thought you guys said when you said.
I'm sorry, it's the next person's turn. Thank you.
wanna get through everybody.
Please be respectful of the next person.
My name is Maureen Bodas.
Thank you.
My address is 4737 Sibel Court in Powell, Ohio. My family and I moved to Olentangy School District last year. In our short time in this district, I have found some rather confusing and concerning items. I'm here to inform the community and some of you, because you might not know, some of the disturbing items I've found. I decided I wanted to get involved with this district, so on November 16th, 2020, I attended a diversity committee virtual meeting to see how I, as a parent, could support this district in their efforts to be more inclusive. This meeting was very disturbing and made me question what the school district actually values, their students or some utopian ideal society. This got me more interested in what their actual goals were. So I went to the Olentangy website and I found the Olentangy Schools Equity and Inclusion Action Plan. This is on the actual website underneath the curriculum and instruction and under the equity and inclusion part. So anybody can go and actually look this up. I suggest everybody go and look it up. So this is a plan that you guys approved in December of 2020, according to Jackie Merkel at a previous board meeting. So I'm going to go through the action plan and actually point out some of my major concerns when I looked at it. So first part is measurement and accountability. Goal 1 says select an external consultant to conduct a comprehensive audit of our existing equity and inclusion practices. Then it lists 5 practices. Isn't this what the Equity and Inclusion Department should be doing already? Why do you need an outside counsel to come in and consultant to figure this out? Policy and handbook, next page. Goal number 1, add language, this is the one that really upset me. Add language into the student handbook and staff handbook that explicitly lays out, and I quote, restorative education sessions as part of the disciplinary process for students and staff disciplined for diversity-related incidents. When I asked somebody in the community what they thought restorative education sessions meant to them, they said gulags. At the virtual meeting, this is what really got me sparked, is because at the virtual meeting, one of the diversity or equity and inclusion administrators said that they had already conducted 8 of these restorative education sessions with students in September of 2020. So I didn't see this policy in our handbook anywhere, and I'm trying to figure out how this group could already be having these restorative education sessions with students when there's not even a place for the parents to know that they're existing. That one really upset me. So next is our recruitment and retention goal. Number 1 is ensure all staff and administrators involved in the hiring process receive research-based implicit bias training. Implicit bias is a CRT buzzword. So There's no reason for that to be going on in our schools. Goal number 3, review and update our district recruitment and retention plan annually with the goal of hiring a workforce that is more accurately reflects our student population. So I was curious, what is our actual student population demographics and what does it reflect? So according to the Ohio School Report Cards on the ohio.gov website, our district is made up of 70.4% white non-Hispanic, 15% Asian or Pacific Islander, 6% multiracial, 4.3% Black non-Hispanic, 3.9% Hispanic, and 0.3% American Indian or Alaskan Native. I couldn't find data on what our actual diversity of our teachers and staff is in Olentangy, but I'm assuming the focus needs to be putting it more on getting more Asian or Pacific Islanders in our schools. But our goal number 7 is to foster relationships with faculty at neighboring HBCUs, so historically black colleges, and also colleges and universities in the Midwest region with a higher number of BIPOC students in their education program. How about we continue to hire people that are most qualified to teach our children? Instead of focusing on their race. I don't care what the color of my child's teacher is. The district's emphasis on the portrait of a learner is purposeful, resilient, curious, and kind. Nowhere do you mention race. Why can't we expect the same emphasis when hiring teachers and staff for the district?
Ma'am, that's 5 minutes.
Training and education is the next part. Their goal is implement mandatory...
Yeah,
Oh, it's 5?
minutes. Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you so much. Hopefully you guys actually look at what you approved, okay?
Miss Sarah Naragana, did I pronounce that correctly? I'm sorry. I'm sorry, could you say that for me? Thank you. I'm sorry. If you could please state your name and address for the record, please?
My name is Sarah Narayana, and I live in the Walker Estates of Walker Woods. Thanks. This past year has been really hard for so many reasons. And my message is just about thanks and gratitude. The diversity, equity, inclusion efforts are a huge step in this community. Efforts because with about 46 languages spoken in Olentangy, in this district, having an intentional effort to fully include all is amazing. Whiteness is every day. It's the norm. It's the default. It's the tradition. And as a parent and a community member, I appreciated the 4 Heritage Months that were brought forth to educate not only our kids, but parents like myself who are choosing to learn something new. The other step in the right direction was who was invited to speak at the One Community conferences, Healing Through One Community. For those who didn't participate or didn't care to join, it was really a great experience. The MLK Service Day, I hope, comes back again. So many of us, us personally, this group of women and I, we did natural hair kits for the community, and we got at least 1 month's supply for that center. And we learned a lot about Black women, Black girls, and their hair, which we didn't know before. We really appreciated the African American read because we got to hear different stories from different authors. The district service plunge, I went to the Family Promise, the home in Delaware, where they serve homeless or transitioning people back on their feet again. amazing student speakers who talked about being in whatever position they are in, whether it's they're transitioning from a he to a she, whether they were attacked or targeted for being a non-white person. And the last person that I felt was really important was Dr. Goldie Muhammad. Excuse me. And the sad part about this amazing woman, who I hope comes back, is that people in our community trashed her, and she had to call them out. That part was pathetic, because it represents all of us. These are ways you all have purposely and actively worked on doing better and seeing who is not at the table. There is so much privilege in this community in terms of our social economic positions, which allows, I'm not interrupting you.
Let's let her talk, please.
I was not
Let's let her
interrupting
talk.
you.
Sarah, continue.
Thank you. Because I came up in a poor place. This is a very privileged economically, social economic area, and it's a blessing, okay? But, you know, we can either look at this situation in two ways: gratefulness and try to move in truth, or have community members who look at it at what others owe them or should give them because it's us you work for. Well, thank you, because I want to move in truth and gratefulness, and I appreciate everything from a really hard COVID year.
Our next public participation is from Ms. Holly Hansen. Ms. Hansen, would you please take the podium and state your address for the record?
Hi, I'm Holly Hansen. I live at 7661 Lydia Drive in Lewis Center. Hi, I have two daughters, one who just graduated and one's going to be a junior. They're both Olentangy lifers as we moved here about 16 years ago. I'm here to make 3 points. The first is to tell you how much I enjoy the orange drive-through graduation and sunset salute. The parents organized a senior car parade that ended up with more than 250 seniors participating, and the entire community coming out to cheer them on as they drove by. It was such a heartwarming event to behold. The sunset salute was beautiful and just the right length, an hour and a half. As for the drive-through ceremony, my senior was thrilled to be able to get out of the car all along the route and hug and take pictures with her teachers and coaches. It will certainly be more memorable than a stuffy 3-hour-long ceremony in a huge building that has nothing to do with Olentangy. So I thank you for that. Secondly, I want to thank you for all the opportunities that are afforded our kids throughout their journey at Olentangy. I am so very grateful for the privilege that I have to be able to live in this district. My graduate took advantage of every program and class needed to get her to the place that she is today. Leadership opportunities abound at our middle and high schools. Advanced classes, extracurricular, sports, the arts, and more. She loved doing the news and calling games with the juice, with state-of-the-art production facilities at their fingertips. She learned public speaking and leadership skills from the Model United Nations group. I can go on and on. She will attend Emory University in Atlanta and has received numerous scholarships from her work at Olentangy and in the community. So I thank you for that. Finally, I want to thank you all for providing mental health support for our children. The partnership with OSU has been a blessing for my family and for many others in Olentangy. I do not think many parents know how fortunate they are for the privilege of having these benefits at their behalf. And with so many kids anxiously returning to full-time school, Olentangy has provided a life-saving support system within the district. And there is nothing more important than that. So I thank you most of all for that.
I believe we have time for maybe one more. If I'm reading the handwriting correctly, forgive me, I believe it's Angela Pigman. Am I pronouncing the last name correctly?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Sorry about that. If you would, please state your name and address for the record.
My name's Angela Pigman. I live at 9010 Emerald Hill Drive. I thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. I know that this topic is probably not going to be very popular based on some of the previous commentary today. We're here because we want to talk about masking for elementary school kids. We know that this is not popular. The numbers for COVID are decreasing, and that's very promising, but we know from last year that things can change very quickly in the span of a couple of months. We know that there's a lot of global COVID infections, and that the possibility for variants that could become more infectious is still something that could happen. The statement was made that COVID does not infect or does not impact children, and I don't think that's quite true. According to the CDC, there is an MIS-C inflammation syndrome that happens to some kids with COVID. There were 4,000 cases. There was 1,000 up until October of last year, and then from February to June this year, despite the decreasing COVID numbers, there's actually been 3,000 of those. So there's no reason to expect that those numbers are going to decrease, despite the fact that COVID numbers overall are decreasing. I sincerely hope that by the time we get to school that we'll have enough immunity that this won't even need to be a topic. But until we have a chance for kids in elementary school to get vaccinated, and for parents,
Let her continue.
and for parents to be able to choose what's best for their child, then we should not have the opportunity to take that right away from parents by not masking. There are high-risk kids in the district who, if they got COVID, could be negatively impacted. The MIS-C numbers don't include the other kids that have other risk factors. Kids are required to go to school by law. Parents don't have an option to choose for their child what is best for them. Over the course of the summer, we can choose not to take my nephew to the store. We can choose to mask when we're out. But when they go to school and everyone around him is not masked, we have no options. We're told that teachers are not being asked for their vaccination status. It would be nice if we had an opportunity for parents who are concerned to request a teacher for their child who's vaccinated. So, I understand that people feel strongly about this, but I don't think that it's right for others to have the choice to decide what's right for our families. Our children, my nephew deserves to have the opportunity to be safe in school. On the other front, I did not plan to speak about this today, but hearing some of the other commentary, I felt the need to respond to it. When I was at work, we were in diversity sessions, and we heard some heartbreaking stories from Olentangy parents with kids who were minorities. And they were harassed. They have been, by resource officers, by staff. They were harassed by their peers. I had a lady who said that she wanted to move into Olentangy. She was told by a realtor that her kind wasn't welcome here. So when the national average is 15% minorities, and Olentangy's black group is 4.3%, you have to ask yourself why that is. So I think that really some of the responses we've seen here today is a demonstration of the implicit bias that we have here. So, I think that there is some value in continuing to try to ensure that these minority students have got an opportunity to go to a staff member that is potentially like them and that they can maybe trust more. I think that there are plenty of minority qualified teachers. There's no reason to believe that hiring a minority person would result in less quality in our school. Anyway, thank you. I appreciate the time.
are we on time? Are we time?
That was a half-hour session with those that came to the podium to speak.
There's several left.
Okay.
I'm sorry? So that would conclude our public participation for this meeting. Okay.
Yes, it has.
That was 30 minutes in total.
All right, next we have 2 discussion items. We have to continue on with the business.
To the people that submitted tonight that didn't get to speak, is all I'm asking.
Yeah.
Is there a process for that? Will they get to speak first?
Yeah, because we did post all of the emails that we received during public participation. If they want to submit them, we can go ahead and read them and post them online still, if you want to. For those 3.
come to the next meeting.
Yeah. Or they could.
Meeting to speak, or?
Typically, folks come in and resubmit because we don't know if the ones that are here will be back. But you're welcome to come back and submit a form on the way in as you come in. Absolutely.
Yep. Thank you. Okay, next we have Kristen Borjaj, our curriculum supervisor, to talk about the math and English resource review.
Proposal of 3 resources that we would like to renew for the students and teachers at the district. The first one is middle school math, and it is a supplemental resource called ALEX, which stands for Assessment and Learning in Knowledge Spaces. And the idea of this is that it supports instruction for all learners in that the program specifically is adaptive, which means it provides just right instruction for an individual who is using the resource. This one is strictly digital. I quite like ALEX. I conducted a study, an internal study of its effects on math achievement, and it did very well. Our students who use the resource routinely in the class achieve outside of the resource. They achieve in other measures. So that was really positive. I also talked to a lot of teachers, and their perceptions of the tool is very positive as well. They see it as a stopgap. It supports students with shoring up whatever is missing or extending their knowledge beyond what's going on in the classroom at a given time. The total cost is there, and we're hopeful that we can provide teachers with additional professional development in the area of using the assessment features of the tool, which are also very positive for our students as well as our teachers using those data to guide instruction.
I just have a quick question on that. So if it's supplemental, is it to catch students up, or is it maybe for students who are going beyond?
Yeah, in all ways.
Okay.
So it does provide support for students who need to catch up, and it also extends students where they are, where the classroom is. They can continue within the resource with gaining more ground. So it really reaches all students. High-quality resource for its adaptability. The second resource is also math. This is for primarily K-5, although we have some middle schools using the resource. It's game-based. It capitalizes on visual learning, so it removes the literacy skill need and focuses strictly on mathematics. This too has adaptive features, which we quite like for teachers and students because it provides that just right instruction. So it's attending to how students are performing, and the system is providing those questions that'll provide that, next step, not too far, not too little, but that what I call just right. And the cost is there for a 1-year subscription. And the third resource is our, I believe, our only K-12 resource. It's referred to as Newsella. It's primarily for language arts. We're proposing a 3-year renewal. We are at the end of a 5-year license. And as I mentioned, it's primarily for English language arts. And this is a wonderful database of constantly updated texts and other resources for teachers. So the strength of this resource is in the updating and always making a fresh resource for teachers, a fresh comprehension, a set of comprehension questions, quizzes, and so forth. And so that's the strength of this resource, is that it really is always fresh. The recent extensions with this renewal will cover a lot of curriculum ground, in my opinion. So there are enhancements within Newsella to include social studies, social emotional learning, and science. They are all Ohio standards line, all of the resources within this resource. It's going to support a lot of teachers and a lot of students in our core classes, as well as our guidance programs. Those guidance, or school counselors rather, who work in classrooms teaching will be able to draw on the social emotional resources that will be provided in this updated version that we're proposing.
Any other questions?
No.
If I may, I believe this tool can be, it's a K-12 tool, but it can be adjusted for the grade level. Is that correct? So that it's, first grader isn't getting 12th grade material.
Yeah, it's not quite like the other resources that have the adaptive technology rather, but the term is leveled. So the text can be leveled for the individual student. So a class of 25 students could be reading a text at, 25 levels, conceivably. So there's a lot of strength in that for teaching and learning.
Thank you for explaining that. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have the Berlin Business Park and the Ravines at Ridge Meadows TIFs, and I don't see Bob Lamb. Is he gone? Is Bob gone?
No, Mr. Lamb's last day with the county will be Tuesday.
Oh, okay.
So as you can imagine, he's trying to balance some final transition type meetings, including one this evening. So we had hoped he could be here, but you only get me this evening. So my name is Rob Platt. I'm the Economic Development Administrator for Delaware County. I'm happy to be here this evening, and I certainly thank you all for your time. I will try to be brief, as I know you have a full agenda. And do I have a, that's okay. Let's see.
You have it right there in front.
Okay, yeah, so basically what we have here is, you're probably aware, our office, the Economic Development Office for the county, has been working with the Berlin Township trustees and the residents in that area for nearly 2 years now on about a 2,000 acre development project, which is very large for Central Ohio. It was certainly a major undertaking for our office, and zoning was finally approved as overlay zoning in December of last year and January of this year. So that being the case, that project is moving forward. So both of these items are related to that. They both were kind of combined due to a developer wanting to move forward with one specific project, specifically a 60-acre project that will be annexing into the village of Sunbury. There was a need for us to split them out into 2 separate TIF requests before you, so that's what you have this evening. These are 20-year, 75% TIFs. So we are asking 2 things of the school board tonight. First, for you to waive the required notice period of 45 days for these TIFs. Again, this is kind of an expedited request based on the development moving forward in the statutory window for the property that's going to annex into Sunbury. So we're kind of at a critical period here of making sure that we get all these things in place before that happens. And again, these are 20-year, 75% TIF requests. I'll start with the Ravines at Meadow Ridge. This is the developers looking at this parcel, these 3 parcels totaling about, I believe, 61 acres maybe. I think I've got that on the next slide. Right, this is right at 3 B's and K Road, south of 3637 in Berlin Township, right at the Berlin-Berkshire Township line there. What is being proposed is a total of 33 structures. You see the data there on it for 792 total units with a market value in the end of $99 million. This is gross acreage of just over 66 acres, net developable of 41. The reason for the significant reduction is because of the interchange project that I'll be talking about here in a minute. Specific to that, I call out here the ravines at Meadow Ridge on the left side of the picture. Again, this is right at the township line, and you'll see the interchange plan. This is not changed from what we've had for probably 5 or 6 years now from ODOT in the new road going up through there to hook up to 3637. So again, that's why the gross and net acreage, there's such a significant difference there. But at any rate, this is the parcels. These are the parcels for the ravines. I want to call out from the Interstate 71 to the west is what we're calling phase 1 of this project. The TIF request for this, and I believe as we go through, so here's a site layout I wanted to give you, but you kind of see the new road coming up through there and kind of what that's going to look like. This one specifically, we have a site plan. The total Berlin Business Park, it's too early to have those plans in place right now, but I will get to that. I guess the estimates that we're coming up with, and this is after meeting with Mr. Rafe and Mr. O'Brien and Ms. Hatfield, it looks to be, again, these are estimates based on the number of units and what we're seeing here in the district. It looks over the course of it, 143 new students being generated. And then you see annual and 20-year costs, the 20-year obviously being the TIF, life of the TIF, when then that would roll off and everything would go back to full money being sent out. So what is important here is the amount and the TIF revenues, the amount to the schools, the cost of students, so basically those last 4 boxes. The reason it's important is because as we start with the first one, $43.8 million is the estimate for the 20-year life of the TIF, the portion that would be set aside for the infrastructure. That is being 100% sent to the interchange improvements. So the interchange, as I said, has been kind of a discussion for a number of years now, and to be quite honest, there's just not been a solution to get the funding off the ground. ODOT has about $10 million in track funding slated for it. That has not changed, but what has changed is there is new development interest in these areas now. The county engineer's office has stepped up and offered to take care of the engineering costs for this, so they're going to cover that out of their budget. So that is going to kickstart the interchange. We need this $43.8 million, to be quite honest, to get the project going, to get that phase 1 from 71 headed to the west to hook into that 3637 piece. So that's the money that would be generated. I do want to be very clear and upfront. The NCA school district revenues we call out there, the NCA is not a function of the county in this case. This would be the village. So this is what was presented by the developer to us as potential additional revenue to the school district. That is something that you all would need to follow up with the district, and I know Mr. Rafe is aware of that, and we're certainly happy to help with that. But I guess I want to be clear, as I can't, from a county's perspective, guarantee you that money, but it is being discussed as being available, so be aware of that as revenue to the district.
Can you go back?
Sure.
So the revenue is like 14.6 million that you're estimating.
Yes.
But the cost to educate the students is 37.1
Yes.
million. So if you throw in the extra 5.1 million, you're at like $19 million that would be coming into the district, maybe 20 million.
That's correct. We're able to get about half of the cost of the students covered through doing this. And I'll bring this all together in a summary in the end, because this is, recall, a 60-acre piece of a 2,000-acre development. So, but yes, that is what that's showing. Honestly, we try to make it the school district as whole as possible when we look at these projects, and try to look at as many different revenue mechanisms as possible. In this case, we need the TIF revenues for the infrastructure, so we're trying to find that balance to get the revenues in place, and then also make the interchange possible. So there is a deficit there, but you'll see in the end kind of what our mindset was coming through that.
And also, I just want to point out, this is based on our apartment enrollment, which is lower than our single-family home enrollment. So if we were looking at...
That's an important point, because the alternative is you take this 100 acres, you put single-family homes with a 3 yield on them versus 700 apartments with a .18 yield, the number of students goes up dramatically in the single-family homes, and your cost to cover, that gap just grows exponentially.
Yeah, that's a great point, and the overall tax revenues, property tax revenues are higher on the commercial development, for commercial residential as opposed to the single family. So, and I'll get to that as well on here, but when I guess I should take a step back. When we embarked on this Berlin Business Park concept, and again, these acres are part of that, it's just been separated out. It was kind of a multifaceted approach, looking at ways to find revenues from commercial development as opposed to single family at that lower rate. What is the impact of the schools? What can we do to take 2,000 acres, reposition it from what could be all single family and new kids to the district versus commercial development that's going to spin off a higher tax base? So that's with the mindset that we went at this with.
A comment I liken it to is what would it be like here if
They were single families,
Yeah.
homes.
you never let me finish?
I always read your mind.
What would it be like here if Polaris were all single-family homes? Because it was the same argument, as any opposition to Polaris was the same kind of issue, so.
Yep. Yeah, that's exactly it, and I do have that in one of my slides here. The Berlin Business Park, I told you we started with a 2,000-acre concept. As we moved through the zoning, we did have a property owner take out a couple parcels. They wanted to embark on something different, and that's their option. This 1,790 acres is what we ended up with at the end of the zoning, and does include in that number the 61, 66 acres we're talking about at the ravines, so it's still lumped together. But the important thing is, by and large, all that land is owned for ag and single family. So we're talking about what could it develop as, and what is the net effect if we reposition the land for commercial and light industrial type uses, which is what we've done through these overlays. So this is the area we're talking about. It's the eastern edge of the city of Delaware out to the township line at Berkshire. This is the final Berlin Business Park approved development plan. There's a few things I want to point out because it's important that we know. In the right side there, the eastern part, in that kind of dark orange area, that includes those 3 parcels for the ravines, right? So that again was in that map when it was approved for zoning. The yellowish areas are a lower density, like a condo type product at 4 units. With multifamily at 10 units. The reason that is in there, by and large, is the trustees and the existing residents wanted to protect the existing single-family residences along Curve Road, up at Baker there, but Dunham Road, I believe it was. No, Dunham's on the south. I forget the one on the north. But at any rate, anywhere there was a single-family existing residence, they wanted some sort of buffer and didn't just want a light industrial use up against it, which makes sense, right? But another thing I want to point out is this blue area in the middle is a mixed-use product. So you might end up with a commercial residential use on the second or third story, but the zoning is geared towards a retail commercial type first floor product. Really, it was kind of a neat thing in this middle peninsula area, and I hope it develops this way, because they were trying to do the commercial, like the Starbucks type product right on the bottom, and a restaurant that on the second floor then could have outdoor dining, right? So rooftop dining and things like that. The residents were heavily involved in the architectural standards of what went into this, and so they were brainstorming some things to try to get in there. So I thought it was pretty cool, but probably most importantly in this is this purple area. It's slated as industrial, light industrial on the map. The way we did this is it kind of builds. So you have professional research and office type uses in the light blue, turquoise kind of areas, but those uses are included in that purple area. So when you look at this map, you first think, well, that's going to be 543 acres of light industrial. Well, that's not really necessarily the case. It could be, but it could also continue the professional research office type uses up through there, which have a higher valuation, thus generating higher property taxes. So we kind of put it in there as a possible use, maybe maybe you end up with a data center in there or something that's not really spinning off a lot of employee traffic and things like that, but it does spin off the property tax base. That's a possibility there. You might have some light industrial buildings, but it's likely that you're going to have commercial, professional office type uses in there as well. So I kind of wanted to go through that as well, so you kind of knew. We based our estimates conservatively to try to say, hey, if it built out as light industrial and if this and that, but it's so far, the plan is so far out, we don't have end users yet, right? So we don't know. So we just tried to give you a realistic view of what could happen there. So
I'll just add to, though, the fact that when we did the TIF for Creekside here behind Menards and MC Fitness, and that was the same concept, was we overlaid a TIF on a large parcel of land with did the infrastructure improvements, got the dirt ready for construction, and you've seen what's happened here in 3 or 4 years. And again, same thing with the Kerbler property that was slated to be 1,400 single-family homes, and now will be mixed use, and so.
Yeah. So it looks like my box got smashed down a little bit there, but and this is really, this and then the summary
we
page.
actually fixed those.
Okay. It was much worse when I sent it to you, wasn't it? So if we did nothing at all, right? So if we didn't embark on this Berlin Business Park overlay for this area, with the acreage that was available for single-family homes to be developed, you would be looking at almost 2,800 students additionally from this build-out. And we were very clear about that as we went through the process with Berlin trustees and Berlin residents. The interest was to try to reposition that land for commercial and light industrial type uses. In doing so, we called that the Smart Growth Plan. There is the possibility for new students, we're well aware of that, but it's much minimized, and you see that the potential then is 557 units in this total of 1,700 and what would end up being 1,730 acres after that 60 is taken out. So, and again, you look at the 20-year cost of the students, we tried to look out and get an average of your cost per student, take it out over the 20 years, and we did account for the build-out period. I think we put that at 10 years to see this completely built out. So, taking that, we go back to the similar slide before. Total TIF revenues generated, 256. TIF revenues going to infrastructure at 144.8 million. I will tell you a portion of that probably will be used for the interchange because we're not able to fully fund phase 1 of that interchange off of just the Ravines TIF. But by and large, that TIF revenue is what's going to make that Berlin Business Park build out. The roads that have to go in there, the water and sewer extensions, things like that. So that's where that money is going to go. The schools then would retain $88.5 million at the full build out, and then you see the cost of the students over that 20-year period. And again, as I said before, we embark on these kind of things to try to make the school district as whole as possible. Really, this effort was to try to reposition that land so it went from that single family, if not, because you go back here and you see you're at 2,800 students if we did nothing. So that was really I guess the net effect when we're talking about cost of students. If that was the case, it shoots through the roof. I didn't even put the number on here for you. So in a summary, really, it's these last few boxes here. Had the I didn't put it in this slide, but I did here. So if it built out as those single-family units, so we didn't have this overlay, you're looking at $527 million based on your student cost and a build out of 10 years over that 20-year life of that TIF. So again, there's really not a way for us to make the district whole here. What we are able to do is reduce the district's exposure, and that's what we're calling that savings of $360 million that you otherwise would have had if it would have went all single family.
I have a question for Mr. Rayford. Maybe Jeff would know this. In our current enrollment projections, what do we have this area as? Do you know? Is it single family? Or
with zones agricultural and
so it could be developed, right? So
and we take into account, we look at all those different zoning classifications. So there's FR1, so if it's zoned FR1, it's farm residential 1 acre lots, and or planned commercial, planned single family, planned residential. So planned residential, you could end up with 4 to 6 units per acre. It just depends on what the Now, this process was about a 2-year process with Berlin Township. I mean, I attended probably half a dozen township meetings, met with residents about why I thought this was a good thing long-term for our district to position this land that way. So right now, it is generating kids in our projections. So
Yeah,
when
that's
we
what I was-
take this offline, that will modify our projections significantly.
What I was getting at, yep.
So that, we wanted you to see the summary there and really the net effect and what could have been the effect of the
The other
district.
point I make about these is that it also starts the clock running for when the 20-year period ends. And at year 20, we'll still be having the same number of kids, and that, again,
The TIF comes up.
what would our taxes be if we didn't have Polaris as commercial property?
Yeah. Yeah, you're going to want that, once that TIF burns off after 20 years, like Mr. Rafe said, you go back to full collections, right? And it's the same thing for when you talk about the township and the county engineer's office, right? They're needing their little portion that they get, right, for replacing roads and things like that. So it's, I think you've probably heard Bob say before, that's why we don't come to you with 30-year TIFs. It's a 20-year that really makes sense for us, so. So then the question of all this, why do all of this? And really I go back to this. This phase 1, again, is what we're interested in and trying to fund with this. All almost 44 million of the Ravines TIF would go to that. A portion of the Berlin Business Park, I haven't determined that yet, but whatever it ends up needing to be there will also, I will tell you, the other improvements to the east, just so you're aware, the county is finalizing an agreement with the village of Sunbury on that end of stuff for other property outside of the district that's within the village limits. So that's why our focus for these TIFs is this portion that's going to get us from 71 up to 3637, because that's the portion we need to fund to get the Berlin Business Park developed, or get going. So at any rate, that's the root of why we're doing all this, why we're asking. So the request again this evening is your approval of a resolution to waive the statutory requirements because of the time crunch we're in here, and we're trying to meet some deadlines, some really key deadlines there, and then also the 2075 TIFs, both of them, to get this project going. So I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Kevin, you were in the discussion.
We spent some time on this, and I think it makes sense. It's, anything we do to find high-quality, non-single-family residential development is significant. So,
yeah,
I think it's a good project that I'm going to support.
If you're interested and have absolutely nothing else to do in your life, I would encourage you to go to our website. Both of the overlay zoning plans are there. They are probably 50-page documents each. It's great reading, really. But, the important thing of that is that there was a lot of time spent through those 2 years of design standards for this to make sure there's an identity to the Berlin area for this, for a high-quality product to go in, and ultimately this is going to be a great development. So thank you all for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, moving on. Have some things to vote on. I'm gonna do A and B together because it's the Berlin Business Park and the Ravines at Meadow Ridge, and they're together, and you have to approve one or not approve them both. So I'd like to present board action items A and B for your approval, please.
So moved.
A second.
Any further discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mrs. Patrick?
Yes.
Dr. Weiss?
Yes.
And Mrs. Wagner-Fiesel?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
And then I'd like to present board action items C, D, E, F, and G, because they are all related. As you recall, we extended the contracts of our teachers, our custodial maintenance, and our bus drivers earlier, and it was a 2.5% annual increase, and that's what we're doing with the rest of these employment groups. So do I have a motion?
I'll move.
Do I have a second?
A second.
Any further discussion with those? Call the roll, please.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mrs. Patrick?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Dr. Weiss?
Yes.
And Mrs. Wagner-Fiesel?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Rig?
Yes, I'd like to present superintendent action items A through J for approval.
Do I have a motion?
I'll move.
Do I have a second?
A second.
Any other discussion on those? Lots of
Do your pause for show since he waited us out till 9:30.
I know. We appreciate it, Mr.
He does it every
Schultz.
time he votes for something that my wife's getting approved for, so.
Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Patrick?
Yes.
Dr. Weiss?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
And Mrs. Wagner-Fiesel?
Yes.
Thank you.
Now I need a motion to go into executive session as permitted by Section 121.22G1 of the Ohio Revised Code to consider the employment of public employees.
So moved. Is that Dr. Weiss?
Second?
Sure.
Okay, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Again, we'll be going into executive session, and there will be no action when we come out. So if you could
Other
call the
than
roll,
to adjourn.
please.
Dr. Weiss?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mrs. Patrick?
Yes.
And Mrs. Wagner-Fiesel?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, for hanging around.
Go.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do I have a second? A second. Really, we have to
Call the
scrape
roll,
that up.
please. Dr. Weiss?
Yes.
Mrs. Patrick?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
And Mrs. Wagner-Fiesel?
Yes.
Thank you.
Filibuster.
Thank you.